What is going on, everyone? This is Miles Dompier, and welcome to the 99th episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Today, I am stoked to be joined for the first time by Gene Park, games reporter for Washington Post. Gene, how are you doing on this fine Saturday?
How's it going, Miles? Honored to be on the 99th episode. I feel like 99 is a good number. Even like 100 would be cool, and I'm interested to see who would make the 100th episode. Congratulations on 99 episodes so far. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
thank you for joining for 99. 99 is a nice, strong, powerful number, so appreciate
Mhm.
you filling that spot.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the year of my high school graduation too. So I'm class of 99.
Oh,
So
beautiful. Love that. Well, I'm excited to sit down with you. This is our first time to really sit down in a podcast format and talk about the games industry. And this year's a good year to do it. There's a lot to discuss. So we're going to be diving
it's like we've
into,
never met actually too. So that's interesting. So
pleasure to
thanks
meet
for
you
having me here. Nice
officially.
to meet you. Yeah,
You,
yeah, yeah.
we've shared memes on Twitter and we've, DM'd here and there, but it's nice to put a face to the name and sit down and talk. So I'm excited.
Exactly, man.
So we're going to be diving into the possibilities of a mid-generation refresh, a PS5 Pro, and an Xbox Series X Ultra. We'll be talking about the glowing reviews of Resident Evil 4. We'll be talking about impressions of the Diablo 4 beta. We're going to be talking about the latest developments surrounding the Activision Blizzard acquisition, discussing whether or not 2023 is going to be the year for Xbox Game Pass, and so much more. But before we get into all of that, Gene, for the lovely folks joining us, let us know who you are, where we can find you, and why you love gaming.
Yeah, my name is Gene Park. I've been a journalist at the Washington Post for about 8 years now. I'm going 8 years next month. Two of those years, well, 3 years of those years was as a games journalist. I've never covered games before. I only started at the very tail end of 2019 and just kind of threw myself in there. But part of that is because the Washington Post did have an interest in covering video games as a different section altogether, and I was part of the audience team. The audience team advises different sections across the organization to find audiences, right? So I was advising them on how to best cover video games. Initially, the launcher was supposed to be launcher is was the name of the section. It was supposed to be only covering esports. And I advise guys, I don't think we should only cover esports. Part of the problem is that a lot of esports organizations do pretty well on themselves and like announcing news information and blah blah blah. So really the only thing left would be like accountability stuff and anything like that. So I don't think we should only focus on esports because that would just be like a nothing section. And they took my advice, and then after that. After all that advice session, they were like, "Well, we should hire somebody." And it's like, "Well, we already have Gene, so we should just hire him." And they're like, "Okay." So, just all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh, I guess I'm a gaming journalist now," which is great. It's not something that I ever wanted to be. I've only been a regular ass local newspaper journalist for most of my 20 years as a professional journalist. But it's not something that I didn't want to be. I just never thought that it would ever happen, and it just did. So that's one. You can find me on Twitter at Gene Park. I'm also on Twitch. Also again Gene Park. I'm very easy to find on the internet. I make it easy. I'm definitely one of those folks who I'm a social media pro. So every time there's a new platform up, I'd always be squatting on my name, Gene Park. Unfortunately, on Facebook, I remember the day when I was stuck in traffic and I couldn't go back home to log in facebook.com/Gene Park. So it's just facebook.com/G Park. Don't add me on Facebook. I never use Facebook anymore, so don't worry about that. So
Beautiful. And then the most important question, Gene, is why
right,
do you
why do I
love
love gaming?
why do you love gaming?
Why do I love gaming? God, there's so many answers to that. But I just think that it's just the most intoxicating, engaging medium of entertainment and art form there is. Um, books are great. I've been reading books for as long as I could read. Films are great, TV is great, but like there's nothing really quite like a video game that just locks my brain in and takes me away. It's to me the greatest distraction in the world, and it's amazing. The games have only gotten better, honestly,
Mhm.
over the decades. We're about to talk about Resident Evil 4. If you showed me the way Resident Evil 4 looks now, back in 2005, I'd be like, you're an insane person. That's a movie, you know.
What is this witchcraft you're presenting
E-
to me? All right.
Exactly, like I grew up in the days of Metal Gear Solid, and I was like, that looks like a movie to me, and like back in the day, and like that, we've just advanced so far right now, not just in terms of technology, but in terms of the different style of play we have, the different genres. That there's so many different subgenres that they all seem like nonsense now. Yeah, and we're looking at 2023, which I think is going to be a red letter year for the games industry. It's going to be one of those years where I think a lot of people are going to remember.
Yeah, it's
Right,
exciting.
provided that everything comes out on release, provided that there's no more delays,
There's a
please.
lot of ethereal. There's a lot of non-release dates. There's a vague year now is kind of the trend. You give a vague year, and then you see where you're at, and then
Yeah, yeah,
maybe about 3 months out, you say, okay, here's the release date. We know for
yeah.
sure it's
Forza
coming in three
Motorsport,
months.
come on, come on. You can do it this year, Forza Motorsport,
They can do
please.
it. They
Yeah,
can. They're not sure when. It's coming.
yeah.
It's 2023. Um, but yeah, Gene, really appreciate you. I appreciate the way you cover not only the games industry, but just the journalism in general. And you bring a lot of um openness to the conversation, which I think is really important because a lot of people kind of have assumptions about how everything works, and it's nice to
Mhm,
have those conversations with the community. And that's something you do very frequently. Is you're out there, you're having the conversation about video games, and
mhm,
like you touched on, video games is this unique medium that does something that nothing else can. And I think we
mhm,
all have that specific moment or that game that we can point to that said, "This if this is video games, I'm all in." So do you have
mhm.
a specific game you can point to that is that for you?
Man, that's a great question. And I was actually honestly thinking about that last night. So it's interesting, like, and you didn't even like preview this question for me, but I was thinking about like, what is the game that like really did it for me? And it's either Resident Evil 1 or Metal Gear Solid. And it was, and I'm leaning towards Metal Gear Solid because there was a huge hiatus in high school where I just wasn't playing video games at all. Like I didn't even know Resident Evil 2 came out until like a year later, and then when I saw my friend playing Metal Gear Solid, I was like, wait, there's so much talking, and like, and then I started to absorb the story, and I was like, this is amazing. Like I can't believe this. Video games can do this now. This is incredible. Um, but there's also like Final Fantasy 6, which like moved me to tears back then, way like a decade, 2 decades before The Last of Us ever did. So, that's why I feel old and like like and kind of chastened because like The Last of Us is a great story and it definitely moved me, but definitely wasn't the first game to ever do that. But yeah, I like those are probably the three games that I probably point to immediately is Final Fantasy 6, Resident Evil, and Metal Gear Solid. Um,
I mean,
uh,
those are all-time classics for sure. And I'm glad you
for sure.
touched on the video game storytelling because yeah, it's interesting to see what the each generation's kind of cultural zeitgeist for video game storytelling is. I feel like
Mhm,
this past generation, it's going to be The Last of Us. For your generation, a lot of people point to Metal Gear Solid as that. Oh, damn. Like, video
mhm,
games can be so much more than what I thought they could be when it comes to
mhm,
storytelling. And so I think that's a great shout out for like, yeah, there have been great video game stories for a long time now. Last of Us
mhm,
is a recent example. And, I think when we have those moments, as much as people want to downplay it and say, "Oh, Last of Us," it elevates the entire industry in terms of the conversation. Because then you see
mhm.
those TikToks where people are like, "Oh, damn, I didn't know video games had a good story. Like I've been playing. Like why y'all lying to me about video games?" Like, okay, come on now.
I just saw that poor girl. If you guys don't know, there's this girl on TikTok who really just didn't say the right words because she was
Yeah,
saying about how gamers have been gatekeeping, and it's like, yeah, obviously some gamers do gatekeep, but like I think the problem is that we're a little too eager to talk about like what stories are amazing, but she's like, like you guys, video gamers have been hiding away the best stories ever, after watching The Last of Us. So hit me with your best recommendations, and it's like, oof, like I appreciate her, and I appreciate her interest in games, and that's what The Last of Us does, right? Like, and the show and the game, that it elevated the medium enough to where other certain people can start paying attention to it too, you know.
Exactly.
So yeah, so in that regard, yeah, everyone's like, oh, The Last of Us is so like trite and like cliche, and it's like, yeah, it is, but like there's a lot to it, and I think the show has proven that out. That there's a lot to the story that popular the popular general audience would really, really be drawn to, and it has worked. It's worked. The
It's
Last of Us
worked.
is
It's been a huge hit for
a hit.
HBO, one of their
Yeah,
biggest hits ever.
people who never experienced the story before, they're like, "This is an amazing story. This is an amazing show." Like they didn't see the twist coming. Like I've been watching YouTube reactors, watch the show, and it's like none of them see it coming. They think Joel is gonna come save the day when that doesn't happen. So like all the expectations that were subverted back in 2013 are still being subverted now with the
Mhm.
same tools. And it's interesting to see. Um, yeah. So
Yeah, so that's beautiful. I really appreciate that. Some quick housekeeping before we get into the show proper today. If you haven't joined, Xbox Chaturdays now has a little Discord going, so there's a link in the description if you're interested in hanging out. We do a community Q&A at the end, and then we're just in there talking about movies, games, and music if you're interested. Channel member shoutouts, we got Derek Griffin Jones, Patrick, V Simcoe, Synodex, Anthony, Nick W, and Assassin, and some extra special producer shoutouts to Hargeet Shawnee and Mr. Joanna Dark. All right, Gene, we got to dive into the game of the week, the game that everyone's been talking about, one of the most highly anticipated releases of the year, and that's Resident Evil 4. Going into the announcement of this, I was a huge fan of the original. I was a huge fan of what Capcom had done with Resident Evil 2 Remake and Resident Evil 3 Remake, so I was excited about the possibilities here. And a lot of us have been looking at this game and looking at Capcom with some optimism and some skepticism about the need or the necessity to remake this all-time classic. One of the best reviewed, one of the most beloved games ever. Capcom was going to go and try to rekindle that magic and recapture that magic. So you handled the review for Washington Post, and I don't want to speak too much for you, but it sounds like you walked away very happy with your time with Resident Evil 4 Remake. So going into all of this, where did you stand with Resident Evil 4 and the idea of a remake?
yeah, when the rumors were starting coming around, you can even search my tweets. That I was pretty skeptical of it. I was definitely part of the folks who were like, I don't think it really needs a remake. I think the original holds up still pretty well, and like I don't know what else you could do to it other than just add the twin stick controls, and that's it. And then I saw the trailer, the announcement trailer, and I saw the vibe and the mood that they were going for. I saw how dark the castle was this time,
Mhm.
and I was like, you know what? I can see it. I can see having a really good time with that. Even if they really just remade, and they didn't do this, but even if they just remade the entire game per square inch, the same thing with just like these high resolution RE engines, lighting and textures and everything like that, I still would have been down with it. But the fact that they went in and they were able to remix and reimagine so many different areas of the game, to make it different enough that I feel confident that I think this version of Resident Evil 4 is a different game than the original game. And I say that as someone who's now actually playing both versions of Resident Evil 4 at the same time this week. Last night I was up until 3 a.m. Playing the Steam version, which is probably the only version of Resident Evil 4 I haven't played yet. Because I was just like, I don't need to buy it on Steam. Why do I need to buy it on Steam? And then after that, I was like, I should just play it on Steam now too, because I have a Steam Deck. It'd be a lot of fun to play it on the Steam Deck too. Also played on the Switch. I played on the Xbox 360, played on the PS4, played on the PS3, played on the GameCube, played on the PS2. I had the iOS version when that was still available, and I played that too. Um, what was I saying? Yeah, I just think that um, now it's just yeah, I was just telling you earlier. Now I just have two really amazing, almost perfect games, pretty much perfect games named Resident Evil 4. And they're different enough. And if a lot of people have been asking me what order should I play them in, and before I would tell you you need to play the first one, you need to play the original one first, right? Now I can actually feel like I can say, you know what? I think it might be fun to go into to the new one first, see what you like, see what's interesting about it, and then if you played the original, and if you're open to to the control scheme, it's not that hard to get used to these days. If you're open to how the control scheme works, you'll find a lot of surprises in the original one too. That like it's like the original game is subverting the expectations of the remake, because there's so much different in both versions that like you think something's gonna happen because of your experience in remake. You think something's gonna happen in the 2005 version, and something completely different happens, but it's still within that same mood and like architecture of like that room and like what it looks like and everything like that. But there's like surprises, so many surprises within that I really don't even want to spoil because so yeah, I just really think that you can't go wrong either way.
That's something I love about Resident Evil 4 Remake. I didn't handle our review, so I'm only, I think, 4 or 5 hours in. But
Mm.
what I love about it is much like Resident Evil 2, there's these moments and these areas that when you go back and play the original, you feel that nostalgia. You remember every nook and cranny, every detail of this spot. And then when you progress through Remake, you hit a point where you're like, oh wait, I recognize that object, I recognize
Mhm.
this structure, and then you start to look around and it's this completely redesigned, reimagined version of this small static square of the original game. And they do that
Mhm.
time and time again where it's almost like I could have went through that section and maybe not even realized it was the exact same section from the original. But there are all these clever details sprinkled throughout that kind of, pay respect to the original, but also move it forward. And like you
Mhm.
said, one of my favorite things so far have been the surprises, where you go through a sequence of events and you've played the original, you know what's supposed to happen. You know where you're supposed to go, you know what's going to happen when you do X and Y. They
Mhm.
throw stuff in between that just shakes it up that was not in the original in any way. And like you said, I don't want to ruin any surprises, but there are so many moments where it's just this cool, oh damn, that is not something that ever happened in the original, and that's a cool twist to this story that I know and love.
Yeah, and sometimes they move events. So I'm like, oh, so I know that in 3 chapters this is gonna happen. Oh no, it's happening right now. Like sometimes they would just move
Yeah.
events around and circumstances around where it's like that's not supposed to happen yet, but now I have to face this. This is crazy. And completely unexpected. And then if you go back to the 2005 original, you again your expectations based on your remake experience will be completely subverted because like there's all kinds of weird shit happening in there too. So yeah, it's just like Capcom has really nailed this magic of like remaking something and never really making the old version outdated. I just bought the Steam version of the 2005 Steam version last night, and it's still there. You can still buy that. They're not doing the Rockstar thing of like, oh well, now we got these GTA 3 trilogy remasters, so I guess you don't need these
Other
old
sorry, other
ones.
versions, you're getting
Yeah,
pulled.
the other versions that were better anyways, and like already modded out and everything. Capcom is like, no, like these are two different games. I wish that they would just re-release the original trilogy on modern platforms. The only way we can play the original Resident Evil Director's Cut on modern platforms is on the PS5 like premium tier or whatever. I really wish that they would just re-release Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 uh, everywhere. On Steam, on Switch, everywhere.
Yeah, that would be such a cool little collection. The original, not the remakes, the original
Mhm.
Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 would be a fun little retro collection because it's good to go back and understand what's changed and what the differences are. And like you talked about earlier in the show, the evolution that happens so fast. Like
Mhm.
it makes me feel a little old to know that Resident Evil 4 is 18 years old because I remember when that game was brand new and I remember playing that game on GameCube.
Mhm.
And much like
Mhm.
you, after playing the remake, I went back and started replaying 4 again. And like you said, if you can get past the control scheme, which is by today's standards a little weird, a little dated,
Mhm. Mhm.
there's such a great experience there, and it is so much different in so many ways. Um, so that's one thing that I've really kind of, for me so far, that's been the greatest strength of Resident Evil 4 is that it isn't it's one to one in a lot of ways, but it still is a completely different experience than what I even remember the original
Yeah, you're so
RE4
early
being.
too. Are you at the castle yet?
I'm not at the castle yet. No.
Okay, yeah, because the castle really, really like mixes things up. Where I was just like, I have no idea where I'm at. Like where, like I was like, I think I know what's in the next room, because I memorized the original Resident Evil 4 so well, and then I go into the next room and I was like, "What is going on? What is this? I do not understand this," and now I'm scared. I'm actually caught off guard, and like, look, Resident Evil 4 actually shook me a couple times where I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, to be fair, Resident Evil 2 remake is a scarier and better, like a more survival horror experience. You know, I was watching old videos of Mr. X, and I was like, you know what, you can't top Mr. X. I'm sorry. Like that's like
Just an
like
icon, dude.
yeah, Mr. X's mechanic is just like iconic, and like they couldn't really recreate that in Resident Evil 4 because there's no constant pursuer mechanic. What's interesting is that each of the enemies in the AI they all follow you everywhere. So it's like little Mr. X's like all over the place, you know. And at least in terms of the AI, because that's what the team actually told me when I interviewed them. They said that the biggest challenge they had in making Resident Evil 4 is that they've never had this many enemies act this smart before. You know, Resident Evil Village was one thing, but Resident Evil 4 has basically people, you know. And eventually at the end, like, you know, I don't think it's spoilers, but like you basically fight a paramilitary, you know. So it's like a paramilitary zombie force, and it's like they're thinking, they're moving, they're shooting, they're using they're using heavy machinery. So it's like, you know, like the Lycans in Resident Evil Village were, you know, like feral and like they'll come at you. But like the Ganado and the troopers in Resident Evil 4, they're Call of Duty soldiers basically. So they gotta move and they gotta swarm you. So that was one of the interesting things I found out about the making Resident Evil 4, that they found that the AI challenge was probably the deepest challenge that they had.
Yeah, and even if you've played the chainsaw demo, you can feel it in the way that all of these enemies react on the screen. You know,
Hmm.
you have enemies that are like aware of their other enemies, and you have the chainsaw guy who will just power through anything in sight. But then when you're aiming at them, you know, they have the classic thing where, you know, in the original they would cover their face if you aimed at their head, but
Hmm.
it was a lot more organic and dynamic in this, where it wasn't like the same predictable animation every time. And even when it comes to Leon's character, when certain things fly by him, he flinches, or when people swing at him, he like subtly moves out of the way. So there's a lot
Yeah,
of
when you do the
li-
dives, you know, it's
yeah,
crazy,
there's a
you
lot
know?
of really like there's automated details that happen that really kind of elevate every moment of action in this game. And the original, the action always felt great, but it didn't have those systems. And
Yeah.
Leon now gets winded. He gets tired. If he's stressed or if he's hurt, that will impact his breathing and his body language. So they spent a lot of time on these little subtle details that really make it such a cool way to replay this just classic game.
Yeah, sometimes like when Leon just like firing so much, like he'll just like stretch his arm out. And I'm like, yeah, man. Like sometimes if you just shoot a gun too much, you just need to be like, you just
Just
need to
stretch it out, man.
stretch a
Yeah.
little bit. And Leon will stretch it out, and I'm like, man, this feels so cool. Like, I can't believe Leon is just like stretching. And Ashley is awesome too. You know, I don't know her name, but the voice talent for Ashley did such a great job, and kind of. You know, the original Ashley was a little cartoonishly, you know, like a screamy girl, you know.
Leon!
Yeah,
Leon!
which I love. I love her so much, you know. I love that she does that. But and this actually kind of retains that essence without like having that same squeaky voice. But like it's just someone who's like really concerned about Leon, basically, you know.
Yeah, that's important. Leon's putting himself in a lot of perilous situations. Things
Yeah,
could
yeah,
go wrong for him at any moment. So the fear is
yeah,
understandable.
yeah. And you know, you can tell that all the one-liners are a trauma response, basically, you know. And they don't really say that because but they do start the game off that Leon is traumatized by the events of what happened in Resident Evil 2. And then he just starts joking, and it's just like so I can't help but think that like this game is telling me that this is how he deals with his trauma. That just to say these one-liners, and oh my god, like he has so many new one-liners in this game. The
they
castle, he goes crazy. Like he just like says all kinds of crazy shit. So
see that
because all
blows
kinds of
my
crazy,
mind.
all kinds of crazy shit is happening in the castle, right? Yeah. The one critique I have is that, like, you know, and speaking of the quips, is that the other villains don't quip as much. Um,
Oh,
you know,
Leon takes
Salazar
up
and
all the quip real estate.
he does.
Ah,
Salazar and Sadler are both a lot more serious. Like in the original game, they would like trade insults. It was like a battle rap between like Leon and like the villains, you know. Um, and they'll be like, oh well, what, like this long exchange of Sadler and like, oh well, this doesn't fit into the film script, doesn't it? And Leon will be like, well, you are a bad director. Like, it's like that doesn't really happen in the remake, sadly,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what I miss. But I get what they're doing. So it is kind of funny to see Leon being the only person joking his ass off throughout the whole game. But it also makes it a little bit more charming too. And then the merchant is there too, and he has so many like new lines that are like that are so memorable now. And I'm not gonna repeat them. I just want people to discover like what the lines are and like,
Yeah, because that was a
oh
concern. People weren't stoked when they changed the voice actor of the merchant because his voice quips in the original are so iconic. And when they
yeah,
changed it,
it's like
people were like,
it's
"Oh
like
no."
changing Mario's like woohoo,
Uh-huh.
like what are you buying needs to be there, and he says it, but like it needs to be in that same intonation.
Yeah.
And then,
That
as I'm playing the game, I totally just get used to this new guy's voice too, and it just becomes again part of the background. Again, he's just a new version of the merchant.
I think it's fun. I think that I like that they've mixed up the characters enough that they weren't like, well, this is the cliche that everyone remembers this character to sound like. They were like, well, how do we reinvent that? What's a more modern, upbeat version of that look like? And
Yeah,
I am a little disappointed that Salazar maybe doesn't have the quips that he once had, but like you said,
yeah.
Leon, as you're playing, even when it's not a scripted moment, he's constantly saying dumb things to himself.
Oh my
Like, "Oh,
god,
did you
like
see that?" And I'm like,
yeah,
"Yeah,
yeah. Did
yeah,
you see
Leon, I
that?
did see that."
I have a clip that I want to post, but I don't think Capcom will let me. But once I do, it's just Leon will open a bathroom door and there's a zombie taking a shit, and then the zombie stands up and attacks Leon, and Leon shoots him in the head. Like me as Leon, I shoot him in the head, kick his head off, and Leon says, "Not bad, right?" I'm like, "What the fuck was that?"
Dude. Oh,
I was
one of
like,
my
"What are you talking about,
favorites
Leon?"
still is when he's, the big opening sequence in the village when Chainsaw Man comes out and there's the cow in the barn and the cow was always in the barn, but now you can
Yeah.
shoot the lantern above it and it drops
Mhm.
down, sets the cow on fire and the cow starts charging around. And Leon's line for that, "Send me a bill for the repairs." It
Yeah,
was
bill
just
bill me later for the repairs or whatever. I'm like, this is insanity. There's a cow on
you
fire,
you lit a cow
stampeding a
on
bunch of
fire.
you lit a cow on fire. It is stampeding across these crazy villagers, and then the only thing you have to say is bill me for the repairs later. Like, what is going on? Like, it just only adds to like how
Ugh.
chaotic and like insane and like this is Looney Tunes crap. It's crazy. It's lunacy. That's what it is.
That's it's
That's what Looney Tunes means. It's lunacy. You
Leon,
know.
you watched a cow burn alive, and that's the line? Come on.
You set the cow on fire. You did that yourself.
Oh, dude, that one's still
I just can't believe it. It's incredible. So like there's a lot of moments like that where it's just like, Leon, what are you talking about?
and that's what I love. It makes it feel like I guess some people, myself included, were maybe worried that the humor would be gone completely. That
Yeah.
is part of the charm of Resident Evil 4 is it's weird, it's outright dumb at times, but that makes it feel like a video game, like just a true classic video game in the sense that this is these things would only happen in this format. As we
Yeah,
touched on earlier,
absolutely.
there are things that can only exist and work in a video game. And I think that's what's beautiful about Resident Evil 4 is some of these ideas, if you put them in anything else, if you put them in a movie, for example, it would just be terrible. It would be so terrible. But in the context of the game, it
Mhm.
works. And
Yeah.
so when they showed the darker tone, the reveal trailer was gritty. I was like, are they what's the approach here? And then the newer trailers were like, oh, here's the minecart, here's Salazar, here's the knife fight with Krauser. All the
Mhm.
crowd pleasing stuff that you know and love is there. We're mixing it up a little bit.
Yeah, it's great you said about like it's so unique to video games, because as much as I complain about like the kind of like the slightly pared back tone of the silliness, it's still very silly, right? This is still a video game where a really great piece of advice that you give to any player is flashbang grenade the birds for lots of money. That's you should always remember to do that. If you see a bunch of birds together and you have a flashbang grenade, just toss it in there. You're gonna get your grenade back, and you're gonna get thousands of dollars, and it's gonna be great. And imagine if a movie did that. You know,
Yeah, imagine a movie where
It'd be a
a
great movie.
man. Imagine, yeah, a movie where let's use Dwayne Johnson as an example. Dwayne Johnson is in an action movie. He's fighting off invaders. Then he sets a cow on fire, and you watch the cow run around in flames during the
Yeah,
scene, and then he says, "Bill me for the repairs later." And
yeah, and he would do his little rock thing. It'd be a great movie. I would watch the hell out of it. And I guess that's why like I always admired the Paul Anderson Resident Evil movies. They had nothing to do with the fucking games, and they just like he's clearly just making like this mega series for his wife and everything. But I just appreciated how insane like they went because they were just like I feel like they kind of like lived up to the Resident Evil like spirit of like just being about whatever, and just about monsters. I'm glad they're over, but like during their run, they were fun to watch for sure.
exactly. It was
Yeah,
because Resident Evil 1 in particular set the cheese bar really high. Like
yeah, yeah.
the live action cutscenes in there, the dialogue, everything about Resident Evil 1 is cheesy. It was horrifying at the time. It was a game when I first played it, I could only play in like 20-minute bursts because I was too
Mhm. It
scared.
was it was scary at the time. Yeah,
And I had
that's
this,
how little we had it back then. Is that like the cheesiness of Resident Evil was still really scary, you know?
yeah. Back then, Resident Evil 1, which if you play now is just comical. That was the scariest thing I'd ever seen in my life. That
Hmm, hmm.
rocked my world to its core. I couldn't believe that this weird, scary game was here. And then meanwhile, you're fighting a giant spider, talking about the Jill sandwiches. You have just characters dying that you don't care about at all. But still,
Rebecca. Like Chris has that little, or not Chris, but one of the guys who died just has that little moan at the end when he's like yelling Rebecca, and it's like, oh god, what's going on?
love it. Oh, it's beautiful. So I'm seeing some people bring up this in a super chat here, and that was one of my next questions. So
Yeah,
I'll
yeah, yeah.
address this one now. We got Mr. Joanna Dark, who says,
Good
"Hello
name.
to the GOAT, Miles Dompier, also to his awesome guest, Gene. Should Capcom tackle Code Veronica next? Second, what direction do you think Capcom should take RE9, or would you like to see it go?" All right, let's start with the first question, because that was going to be my question to you is, which
Mm.
Resident Evil game gets the remake treatment next?
It really feels like they're ignoring Code Veronica altogether. Like it really feels
Yeah.
like they don't want to talk about it. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know why they feel like it's some kind of dark secret. Like to be fair, it hasn't really aged well. Like its depiction of people who cross dress, and everything like that, and
Hmm.
there's a little bit of gay panic there. So they would, and the same goes with Resident Evil 5. And people have asked me why do you think Resident Evil 5 racist? It's like I don't think it's racist at the beginning, but it gets kind of dicey. Not I wouldn't even call it racist, but it's pretty problematic and dicey in the middle part when you start going into the villagers and it's just a bunch of unga bunga
uh,
zombies coming at
yeah,
you, and it's
that
like okay,
that bit kind of takes you by surprise. You're like, oh, okay, we're
it's
doing that. Okay.
yeah, yeah. It's like okay, yeah, I think there's good ways to kind of reimagine to go around both of those things, and I think they will because it feels like Capcom is really taking, some of that feedback to heart, no one's like, saying trying to pick up Ashley in Resident Evil 4 anymore. Ashley is very flirtatious, which I love, but for the most part, people leave Ashley alone. So I do think that they're probably going to do something interesting with the next few games too. But it does feel like that they're ignoring Code Veronica. And honestly, and I said this yesterday that when you play Resident Evil 4 and you get to the Luis Serra parts where he's fighting alongside you, I really felt like I was playing Resident Evil 5.
Yes.
This. I was like, this is an early
Yeah.
version of Resident Evil 5 because like a zombie will be coming at you, like lunging at you, and then he will be like, and then he'll be like, Leon, that's for you, and then like you would go do a melee, and you'll be like, that's awesome, man. That's exactly the co-op action that Resident Evil 5 had, where like Sheva would just set something up for you, or you would set something up for Sheva. Um, I totally, I know that we all complained about Resident Evil being co-op back in the day, but look, those games were really really fun, Resident Evil 5 and 6 all together. So,
Yes,
I think,
Gene. Speak
yeah,
on it because some people hate Resident Evil 5. And
I
I've
know, I
always held
know.
the belief that Resident Evil 5 is not a great horror game, but it is one of the best co-op games. And
It's probably the greatest co-op game ever made, you know, or definitely one of them, you know?
I've replayed that game more times than any Resident Evil, hands down, even 4. Like Resident Evil 5, I have replayed that over and over, and that was the game that set that gold standard of like kind of replayability. Resident Evil has always had it in some capacity, but that was the one where they just had that loop and that hook, and you had
I
an
played Resident Evil 5 so much too, yeah.
I'm playing it right now. I started a new run with a friend the other day because we were,
That's awesome.
excited about Resident Evil 4 remake, feeding on that Resident Evil energy, and I went back and played it. I was
Yeah.
like, this game still kicks ass.
It still kicks ass. It's so
like
good.
you,
I just played it last year, yeah, for sure.
like you said, there are areas where you're like, yikes, you really can't do that anymore. And
Mhm.
there was the whole controversy surrounding the launch where they had to like adjust things because the early builds of that game, people were like, whoa, hold on, this is not going to be interpreted well. So
Yeah,
there's some baggage and some stuff they would need to work out. But like you said, the second I saw the Luis Serra parts in the trailers, and the second I saw the overhauled Ashley system, I was like,
Mhm.
though Resident Evil 5 is next, baby.
Yeah,
They're
you
setting
could
that groundwork.
they're totally setting that groundwork. They're totally, like, training and, like, setting the foundation for how Resident Evil 5 is gonna work, and I'd be
Hmm.
super excited for it. I play the Mercenaries, co-op in Resident Evil 5 and 6, so much fun. It's so
So
much
much fun.
hectic fun. It's so good. It's so good.
Yes. Okay, I love that.
That's when you really, really unlock the potential of, like, the combat system in these games, you know? And you see how deep they go, you know. And like one thing I see a lot of new people playing the Resident Evil 4 chainsaw demo, and I see a lot of new people just shooting zombies, and it's like, no, you gotta kick them, man. Like the whole point
Shoot
of the
him in the
game is
knees and kick him.
shoot him in the knees, pop him in the head, and then set up that melee so you can get the 3 or 4 zombies in the same roundhouse kick, and like trust me, your kicks will hit harder than a bullet will, you know.
Another thing I really love
And
about
that's the beauty about this being a video game, that your
yeah.
kicks will hit harder than the gun bullet will, you know?
Yeah, they set that tone right at the beginning of the game when Leon roundhouse kicks a man to death. Like
Yeah,
that's
and then
the
snaps his neck. Yeah, you know?
so they're
Just
letting you
one
know
kick, you know?
Leon's been working on himself, all right? He's been working
Yeah.
on his moves, he's been hitting the gym, and he can roundhouse kick a person to death, okay? I love that that's how they introduced Leon in this game. I'm like, "Man, alright, let's go."
Yeah, he's been doing some Secret Service training for sure, you know?
So, Mr. Joanna Dark, love him, friend of the show. He constantly baits me when it comes to Code Veronica because I know Code Veronica is beloved by a lot of people. It's always been one of my least favorite Resident Evil games. I put it
Me
in
too.
the same tier as 0, where it's like I
Same here.
don't want to ever play it again. I played it once. I tried to replay Code Veronica because it's on Xbox via backwards compatibility. God, 6 months ago? I just couldn't. I made it like an hour and a half in. I'm like, this game still sucks. I
Yeah.
just can't. It has the worst opening in any Resident Evil ever by a lot.
Mhm.
It is the dumbest, most nonsensical opening for Resident Evil. And that's saying something, all right? This series is
Mhm.
dumb. It's
Mhm.
synonymous with dumb. And like Code Veronica, I don't know. I know people like it, but when people were said, "Oh yeah, do Code Veronica next," I'm like, "No, please, just leave that in the past and go to what's next."
It's
I,
just it's a cool story. That's all people want, you know? And it's like, you know what? Just remake Code Veronica into a movie or something, you know?
yeah, make
Like
it a straight to Netflix CG
yeah, make it a
thing.
straight to Netflix CG thing, like, that would be fun. It'll be fun to see Wesker, and do his Matrix shit and everything like that. So, yeah, and Resident Evil Zero too, I'm totally with you there. I tried replaying that, last year. I was like, "I can't do this. I can't do this anymore." I already did this once. Or, like, twice or a few times back in the day. I was like, "I'm not gonna do this right now. I'm sorry."
Gene and I on the same page with Resident Evil. I appreciate that because people tell me often I don't like the co-op Resident Evil. I'm like, let's go. I've been wanting co-op Resident Evil for so long. As soon as they
Yeah.
started doing like Resident Evil 2 remake, I was like, oh, maybe there's hope for 5. Maybe we'll get a new co-op. Maybe we'll get a new co-op game because
Yeah.
it's not as scary, but it is like some of my favorite memories of gaming have been Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6. And again, Resident Evil 6 is not a great game in a lot of regards, but
It's a messy one.
it feels so good to play though. When you're
The
in
action is amazing, you
oh
know, I
man.
played the hell out of it on Xbox 360. That was the first version I played it on, and it's just, you can do dives, you can just do straight up punch combos. It's just straight up like Devil May Cry game with guns. It's amazing, you know? There's
Yes.
there's no game that plays like it these days, and it all controls very smooth. the potential out of the game again unlocks when you play mercenaries mode, and mercenaries mode is just so much more fun in co-op. You know, I didn't really play the Resident Evil Village mercenaries mode because you just play it by yourself, and it's like I kind of don't want to do this. I want to play with a friend. We
Yes.
can try to get a higher score together. That'd be great. You know. And we
Oh.
coordinating against a zombie attack. That's the whole thing that Left 4 Dead and Back 4 Blood did, you know, and like Resident Evil 5 kind of did better, honestly, to me, you know.
Ooh, yeah. Gene just dropping some facts on here because I agree. Resident Evil 5, especially when it comes to co-op, like there is nothing that has filled that void for me. There's nothing
Hmm.
that's filled the Resident Evil co-op void. It was a very specific foundation. It was a blueprint that was, that elevated what you know and love about Resident Evil. Sure, the storytelling gets kind of lost, as we saw with 5 and 6. Both of those
Hmm.
stories are kind of all over the place. But if you take it at face value and I just imagine these are Michael Bay directed Hollywood movies. The story
Yeah,
isn't great, but there's enough spectacle and action to keep you moving forward. And
I love Michael Bay movies, so you
hey,
know, sue me,
all
you
right,
know.
there we go.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And then one final question here that he asks: what direction should RE9 take?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Dude, I have no idea, man, because like Village ended on such a weird note, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Um.
I do think that it would behoove the series, and it does seem like they're going this way to return to the classic characters, to Chris Redfield, to Jill Valentine. Um, the fact that we see Jill in that new movie, I'm already forgetting the name, but I'm gonna watch the hell out of it anyways. And also my own conversations with the developers, they say we didn't know they're only just realizing how much people actually love the classic characters. So I do think that their like Resident Evil 9 is going to be some kind of return to one of the original cast again. After the last two games with Ethan Winters, who I loved, and if you guys want to see my story, I have an ode to Ethan Winters. I he's my dumb cuddly like weird little hero, you know. And he's the opposite of Leon, where Leon's puns like are silly, but they land and they make sense, you know, at least in the context. And like Ethan is like just saying nonsense, you know, and like, it's so bizarre, you know. And when he kills the bug ladies and he just oh, I hate bugs, and it's like what?
Just you just
That's all you
witnessed one
got,
of the
Leon?
most
All right.
horrifying things imaginable in your life, and that's the line?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And then, you know, like the fact that Ethan gets chopped up in Dante levels of like he's basically Dante, except that he feels everything. Dante is tortured and like mutilated throughout the whole series, but he doesn't feel it, you know, because he's impervious. Ethan is like Dante if he could just feel everything, which is horrifying, you know?
Ethan is the
So,
ultimate everyman. He's just like
yeah.
he's like a Bruce Willis figure in a movie where you just watch this dude get beat for hours.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Doesn't
I do think that you know it'd be great if they went back to third person perspective, and I do think that they're kind of toying with that, especially since they added the third person camera to Resident Evil Village.
Mhm.
It does feel like that they're kind of go back to that too. I will miss the first person perspective, and that's a surprising thing for me to say because sometimes I don't always love first person perspectives in every game, right? Sometimes I just get tired of first person shooters, and then sometimes I just really, really need to just play a first person shooter. I love them, obviously, you know. But sometimes I just don't need it in every game. But with Resident Evil, it really worked really well, you know.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
when they first moved to first person, it was pretty divisive. Some fans were really annoyed and upset that they got rid of third person camera for first person. I like both. I feel like I like that they've kind of given room for both. When they did the third person DLC and updated Village to go third person, it kind of made me feel like that was the decision, like outside of VR, and maybe they'll keep it going for VR purposes, that they're not going to do first person with these games. And if RE9 was third person, I would be slightly bummed only because Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village, first off, are just incredible games, but we owe the current state of Resident Evil to Resident Evil 7. So the
yeah,
reason I feel like that Capcom is so good, that Resident Evil games are so good, is because of what they did with Resident Evil 7. And that was like, hey, we can mix things up. we can take something people know and love, and we can shake that up and deliver it, and it's going to do well, and people are going to be excited about it. So that kind of gave them the courage to go back to the well for Devil May Cry, Monster
Mhm.
Hunter in some regards, and just completely disrupt their formula for these franchises. And obviously nostalgia is important, and they want to go back to classic characters, but I'm still hoping they find a way to evolve Resident Evil.
For sure, yeah, and I think they will. The Resident Evil has been changing so much. Resident Evil is one of those impossible series that keeps changing and somehow revolutionizes the industry and somehow stays as the central survival horror franchise. After all this time, it is still the king, you know?
It is still the king. It's still the
Mhm,
horror king, and I love
mhm.
it for that. Couple more super chats here. We got Nick W who says the room has some pretty hilarious lines for a movie, so I disagree. Movies can be cheesy and still really entertaining.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
I love cheesy. I watch a ton of cheesy horror movies. So my point wasn't that movies can't be cheesy, it's that there are certain things that really only exist in video games, or really only work in video games.
Like, even if you saw The Rock or a movie version of whatever, of someone throwing a flashbang at a bunch of crows and then they get a bunch of money, that's not your money that you're getting, you know? Like, as a player, when you pick up all those pesetas, it feels great. You're just like, "Ching, ching,
Yeah.
ching, ching,
You get the
ching, ching."
you get
That's
the
that
shiny feedback.
Yeah, you get the shiny feedback. That's the important thing about Resident Evil 4 being a video game, because like you are getting that feedback, that this upgrade economy that they created for Resident Evil 4 remake with the spin-offs and the side quests that you do. I'm doing the side quests every single time. I've run through the game 6 times. I do all the side quests all the time because I always need those jewels, because I always need upgrades, you know? And it's like that kind of feeling you just won't get in a movie, because there's you can't upgrade in a book, you can't upgrade in a
Yeah.
movie, you can't upgrade in a TV show.
Yeah.
You know, when you watch The Last of Us and you see Joel get a new gun and he's like, oh, he's upgrading, ho ho ho. But it doesn't. There's like, oh, nice reference to the game. That's all you get.
Oh,
You
you
know,
get.
but it's not as cool as you actually just picking up the M4 yourself and being able to shoot up the hospital. You know, spoilers for The Last of Us. Sorry.
Spoilers. Oh no. Oh. A couple more super chats here. We got Game Seeker M who says, "Congrats on episode 99. Keep them coming. Appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out." And Nick W with one more that says, "You two are nuts. Resident Evil 5 is decent, but a horrible Resident Evil."
Oh,
Um,
I can take that.
I'll take
It's
it.
not a great Resident Evil game, but you know, it's a look. It's one of the greatest action games ever made.
It
I
may
think
not be
I
a.
like it better than Gears of War, and I love Gears of War. You know,
It's
the Gears of War trilogy is like one of the best ever. But like, you know, when you if I think that there are certain feelings in Resident Evil 5 that you can't get in Gears of War, because Gears of War is pretty much straightforward. You shoot, but with the cooperative aspect of how Resident Evil 5 works, how you're sharing ammo, how you're setting up like melee moves, it's like volleyball, you know? Like you're totally just
yeah.
setting up your partner for spike. You don't really get that in Gears of War, right? In Gears of War, you both shoot the guy at the same time, and maybe
One of you
that
gets the
be it.
chainsaw finish. You get that.
Yeah, one of you get the chainsaw finish. That's about it. But then in Resident Evil 5, you're always thinking about the other person. Always, always.
Yeah. So it may be horrible, but I would throw down some money that they're remaking it pretty quick. So
I hope they
maybe it'll
are.
win you over. All right, maybe it'll win you over, and I hope for the sake of co-op that 5 is next, because let's go. All right, huge shout out to all the amazing people joining us live. If you are digging the show, hit that like button, share it out. If you are new, we are live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And real quick, I want to talk about what's next for Capcom. We talked about what's next for or what's potentially next for Resident Evil, but you and I were talking before the show that Capcom is just firing on all cylinders. They are just delivering banger after banger, and they've found a way to reinvent all of their core, and I shouldn't say all, many of their core franchises in ways that people have really resonated with. We got Street Fighter 6 coming out. That looks incredible. We've had Resident Evil. We've had Devil May Cry. We've had Monster Hunter. They announced Dragon's Dogma 2. We know that Pragmata's coming up. We know that Exoprimal's coming up. So I gotta ask, what are there any omissions right now? Are there any franchises that Capcom is sleeping on in your eyes that they need to go back to that well and
Mega Man.
bring to the future?
It's Mega Man. It's Mega Man.
Yes.
I don't know what they can do with Mega Man. I love Mega Man 11. I actually think Mega Man 11 is like probably my second favorite Mega Man of all time. So still, again, that's still part of the Capcom Renaissance. They made
Mhm.
a new Mega Man, and it was amazing. It ended up being one of the best they ever made. And then they just kind of dropped it because the series doesn't sell that well. But I really hope that they figure out a way to be able to support that. And the way Nintendo has with Metroid, we all know that Metroid hasn't sold that well, but the
Mhm.
Nintendo's really been pushing it lately, and it's been paying out well. The audience has Metroid Dread sold more than any other Metroid ever.
Yeah.
A Metroid
Yeah.
Metroid Prime Remastered just came and is now like pretty much tied for the best review game with Resident Evil 4 remake. Um, so yeah, I hope Capcom will kind of go the Nintendo route and be like, you know what, Mega Man is so important to us. Maybe we should push this a little bit more. But
Yes.
I am really happy as a Dragon's Dogma fan that they haven't forgotten that franchise because that game came out and it was really unfinished. But the things that it does well, it does it like no other game ever does. Have you played Dragon's Dogma?
Oh, I love Dragon's Dogma.
Oh man,
Love. I,
Miles, I think you and I really click
dude,
there. Yeah.
this isn't meant to sound hyperbolic, and I don't mean it to be at all. But after playing Elden Ring, I went back to Dragon's Dogma, and it
Mhm,
just everyone praised Elden Ring's kind of innovation for the open world RPG. They did a
mhm,
lot of things that really enriched an open world RPG on the action side of things that we hadn't seen before. And then I went
mhm,
back and played Dragon's Dogma, and I was like, oh, Dragon's Dogma was kind of the blueprint here. All right. Dragon's
okay,
Dogma was doing things that we hadn't seen until Elden Ring dropped. The magic
mhm.
system, in particular, in Dragon's Dogma is one of the
Yeah.
best. One of the
Yeah,
best
still
ever.
one of the best.
Ooh.
After 2 generations or whatever, still one of the best. I did the same thing too after Elden Ring. I was like, "Man, Elden Ring was fantastic. What a game." I went back to Dragon's Dogma and I was like, "Elden Ring still doesn't do this."
That's the thing that blew
Yeah.
my mind. There were things in Dragon's Dogma that just that blew me away that nobody else took that and copied it, like just
Mhm,
blanket copy it because there are so many good ideas in that game. So when they announced that sequel, I didn't think we'd
yeah.
get one because they had been so quiet for it for so
Elden
long.
Ring is great because it has great co-op, right? In Dragon's Dogma, your partner will put the shield over their head. You jump on the shield, and then your partner will launch you into the air so you can
Yes,
grab onto the head of a
yes,
of a griffin. And then as you're flying, and then the monster will thrash in the air as you're stabbing it in the head. That doesn't happen in Elden Ring. You can't do that in Elden Ring. That only happens in Dragon's Dogma.
yeah.
It doesn't even happen in fucking Shadow of the Colossus. Well, actually it does. But like not as organically as it does. In Shadow of the Colossus, you have to do that. In Dragon's Dogma, that's just one of the things that you can do.
S-
Ah.
Dragon's Dogma, such a special game. So yeah, Capcom. I have a lot of faith in what they're going to do with Dragon's Dogma too. But I'm in the same boat with you when it comes to I want to see Mega Man get some love. And as much as I have nostalgia for the classic 2D side-scrolling Mega Man games, I want them to, like they've done with these other franchises, deconstruct it and then rebuild it
Mhm,
up in like a modern
mhm.
age. So I want
Yeah,
to see a
they do
big
something.
action RPG that's again, this is cliche, but Metroidvania inspired. Like I want
Mhm.
Mega Man to open up a bit, and I want your powers to mean something in terms of traversing a bigger landscape and not just a
Oh
2D
my
plane.
god, you're giving me goosebumps. This is so
So
that sounds so good actually.
yeah, and make it
Very
like
ambitious.
exactly make it like every other kind of open world game right now that has the dynamic of you can much like Mega Man has always been, you can tackle these bosses in any order you want.
Mhm.
But yeah, just take that the fundamental principles of a Mega Man game and just blow that up and give
Imagine
it.
like a Mega Man game like Elden Ring, where you can just like because Elden Ring you can tackle the bosses any way you want to, right? Most of them in any
Mm,
order.
yeah.
Imagine a Mega Man game where you're just like, man,
Yeah. Oh, I'm
what if like,
imagining it.
oh my god, that's amazing, dude. I've never even thought about that.
So that's what I want to see. And then another Capcom IP that I feel like right now in this current moment, um, could come back in a big way is Dead Rising. Dead Rising,
Mhm,
such a great idea for a video game. Such
mhm,
a that was the reason I bought a 360 more than any other game. The
mhm,
moment I
mhm.
played Dead Rising for the first time, I was like, I need this game. I'm gonna pay $500 to play this game because I love it so much.
Hmm.
So I want to see Capcom go back to the well. And again, we have a lot of blueprints. Like I think State of Decay has done a lot of really interesting things. I think State of Decay 3 is gonna evolve that in a huge way. But I want to see Dead Rising we almost got this in Dead Rising 3 was the promise of a bigger scale and bigger scope.
I love Dead Rising 3. It's my favorite one.
And so go back to that. Go back to that. Keep the series ridiculous, but go back to that promise of like, oh, what if Dead Rising was an entire city? What if
Hmm.
that was the Dead Rising experience?
Hmm.
So those are the two that
With,
I feel like have
with all
been
the
done
with all the
dirty.
yeah, with all the time management that you have to do in Dead Rising 3 was great. It's one of the great Xbox One exclusive for sure.
Yeah, let's go. I remember yelling at zombies via my Connect on launch
Hmm.
day with that. Over here, come get
Yeah.
me.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I never did. I actually never
Uh,
had a Connect, so there's that. So
you didn't miss out on too much. It was a
yeah,
cool idea. You know, I'm a Connect apologist. I think there was some great ideas, but nobody used it, so it didn't.
fantastic tech. Absolutely, wonderful tech.
But somebody has to make a good game with it. So, all right, let's talk about Diablo 4 a little bit here because that's another big moment this week. Is that if you pre-ordered Diablo 4 or if you bought a KFC Double Down, and shout out to the WWE. I have to have a side tangent real quick because last week I had Snowbike Mike on, and we had a segment talking about just a goofy segment talking about the promotion for um, the KFC Double Down sandwich. And we were just talking about you can get access to the beta, blah blah blah. I was making some jokes about the KFC Double Down sandwich being gross and how I've had it in the past and would never buy it again.
I wouldn't
And
want it. Yeah,
and
it
I had
sounds
ripped
gross.
this really old, it was like a 14-year-old commercial off YouTube and used this old KFC Double Down commercial just playing in the background, no audio, in the podcast during the segment, just for fun skis. The WWE claimed the entire video and took it down because of that weird old commercial that I played. I was like,
That's
really?
awful.
So
That
I had to
sucks, man.
like cut that clip out, do a whole thing. So yeah,
Oh
shout out
man,
to the WWE for cracking down on the intellectual property that is the KFC Double Down sandwich. But yes, so now as of yesterday, Friday, the servers opened up at 9 a.m. Pacific time, and you could jump online and you could play some Diablo 4. Before I share my experience, Gene, have you had a chance to dive in and play Diablo 4?
sadly, no. I do. Thanks to Activision Blizzard, they did give me a key for early access for the beta too. So I do plan on visiting that later today. But no, yesterday was downtime. It's Friday. I finished work. I'm still going through chemotherapy treatments, and like I just got unplugged from that. So I just really wanted to wind down and just play some more Resident Evil 4. That's
Yes,
about it.
yes.
But look, I love Diablo. I love the Diablo series. There's so many. I'm old enough where I've been on the ground floor for so many series, Resident Evil included, and everything. Zelda, Final Fantasy, and Diablo is one of them. I played Diablo 1 back in college because my roommate was playing it, and I was like, "What is this game? This game looks amazing! Like, are you just clicking the skeletons and they die? That's incredible. And then you're just getting like more gear. What a game. What a concept. And then so I just obsessively played Diablo to the point where like it actually changed like the way I sleep forever probably.
What?
Like, I was playing college and I stopped scheduling classes early in the morning. No, not even early in the morning. I wouldn't schedule a class before 2 p.m. because I
Okay.
knew that I wouldn't be waking up because I was playing so much Diablo and especially Diablo 2. Um,
Oh yeah,
and then
Diablo
yeah,
2. That's one of my most played games ever, hands
a-
down.
absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't tell you how much time I spent on Diablo 2 back in college, and even now during the remastered, I played the hell out of that game too. In the remastered, and Diablo 3 as well. So Diablo 4 coming out, how good it looks. It seems like the character creator is amazing. I'm really, really excited to dive in, and I'm also hearing that it runs great with the controller, and which is great because I prefer the control using the pad over mouse and keys. Now, obviously, I had to do mouse and keys back then, but it's like I wish I could play this with a controller, and now I can. Um,
Yes.
so I'm really, really excited
Yeah.
to get into
I'm glad
Diablo
you
4.
I'm glad you mentioned the controller because my first introduction to Diablo was actually Diablo 1 on PlayStation 1. I remember
Oh,
going into like a Hollywood video and seeing the cover, like a rental cover of like the of Diablo, the demon. I'm like, this is
what a rad looking
spooky.
game.
This is
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, this looks sick. So we convinced my buddy convinced his mom to rent it for us. And so we took it home and we played Diablo and we were hooked because it had 2-player split screen co-op and we played that for hundreds of hours every single weekend, all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
Diablo 1. And then when Diablo 2 came around, like I was day one on PC, I was ready to go. I was so amped up for that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember taking like 4 days off of work when Diablo 3 launched. Like I'm a big Diablo fan. And so to
Mm-hmm.
see them go back and kind of make Diablo 4 look and feel more like what I loved about Diablo 2, I was so
Yeah.
excited because I love Diablo 3. I bought it on PC, I bought it on Xbox One or Xbox 360 and Xbox One. So I've bought Diablo 3 3 separate times.
Mm-hmm.
I will probably double dip on this as well because it has cross play and I think cross progression between uh PC and console.
Oh,
So
totally. I'm totally getting on Xbox and PC.
so yeah,
I'm
definitely
totally.
gonna double dip there, but playing Diablo on controller. I played Diablo 3 at launch on PC. It felt good. But when the 360 version hit and they added the roll to the
Mm,
triggers and
very
and
smooth.
everything just feeling so great, I was like, "Oh my god, like I want every Diablo on a controller now." So
Yes,
stoked
yes.
about that. Stoked
They
about
re
that.
they really, really unlocked the potential of the controller. Like, they did such a good job in the UI. It just goes to show the importance of UI designers.
Hmm?
And the way they were able to just translate all of that into the controller and the menu systems and everything, it just worked so, so well. That was probably the biggest thing about Diablo 3. I'm with you that the art style was disappointing, and like I've got used to it,
Yeah, it's
but
fine. I don't think it's bad. It's just not what
it's
I want, I guess.
yeah, it's still chunky, it's still bloody, like it still feels really good. So that was really important, and I didn't mind it so much, but I did. Well, I was like, but Diablo 2 looks so fucking good though. And Diablo 1 too. So I really wish that they would go back to the aesthetics. And once we started seeing Diablo 4 and how good that looked, I was like, this is great. This is great.
Yeah. So I tried to play Diablo 4 yesterday. I was excited. I was ready to go. I had it
Mm.
pre-installed. I was looking forward to diving in, making my druid. Actually, that's do you know if there's all the classes in the beta? I haven't really double checked, but
I haven't looked.
I've
I
seen the
want to go
menu
into the beta
screen that has
first. Yeah.
all the characters. But yeah, I want to go
Oh.
druid first, so I want to get my hands on the druid, see how that feels. But then I
Mhm.
booted up the game yesterday at like probably 10:30, 11 a.m. and I had
Mm.
a 111 person queue, or no, sorry, 111 minute
Minute
queue,
queue, yeah.
and I was like,
Mm.
"Oh no, I have things to do." 'Cause I
Yeah.
ended up going to a show in Seattle yesterday, so I was like, "I don't have time to wait for this." So
Oh, who'd you see?
I saw "Fit for an Autopsy" and "The Acacia Strain." If you're a big death metal fan,
I don't know them, but I used to like death metal, but I'm definitely not caught up on the scene. So.
yeah, it was fun. It was a loud show. It was an aggressive show. But yeah, I was like, I don't have time to do this, so I
Yeah.
canceled that. I shut the game down and I installed Exoprimal. And
Mm.
so I've been spending some time with Exoprimal. I got to play a couple hours of that yesterday.
How
Um,
was that?
it's so good. It's so again, it's dumb. It's really
Classic
dumb
Capcom.
because it
Yeah.
is a like 5v5 PvEvP game where you're basically pushing through objectives, very Overwatch style. A lot of the class archetypes and these mech archetypes are very much pulled from Overwatch, but it is basically a move forward and kill dinosaurs game, and you'll collect objects along the way. You'll have control points you need to deal with along the way. You're racing another team to do the objectives faster. So it's not all the game is 5v5. It'll be your team trying to kill dinosaurs faster than the other team. And you're all pushing towards this end moment where everybody gets together and it kind of culminates into the big clash. But it is,
Mhm.
if you've played Earth Defense Force, it is just hordes, just waves and
Oh
waves
my
and
God,
waves.
Miles, you were just speaking my language today. Earth Defense Force. Oh
Yes.
my
All right.
God, yes. I
So
love that series so much. Yeah, that's exactly what it reminded me of when I saw Exoprimal. I was like, this just looks like Overwatch Earth Defense Force. That sounds
and,
amazing to me.
hey,
I'm
and
sorry.
that's the elevator pitch. It's Earth Defense Force meets Overwatch. So if you
Ugh,
like either of those things, actually you pretty
yeah.
much have to like both. You definitely
Yeah.
have to like both of those things to appreciate this game. But man, it's good. It's good. I'm really excited. It's going to be a good Game Pass drop because I don't think it's going to be a game that everyone connects with,
Mm, mhm.
but I can already tell that it's going to have this loop and this hook that it's going to pull in a very specific audience. And again, if you
Yeah.
are a big Earth Defense Force fan, yeah, it's that you kill stuff, you get some better gear, you get some upgrades to kill stuff faster, and that's pretty much the loop of the game.
Yeah, hopefully it gets a nice like Outriders like boost at the beginning through Game Pass,
Ah, let's boost that player count because it does a lot of stuff that I really, really appreciate.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I haven't had a chance to play Diablo 4. I've watched some streams, I've watched some videos that people have shared. The art style looks great. I've also talked to people who've been playing the beta for the last like 6 months or so because they've been doing a lot of
Mm,
extensive testing on this, which
sure.
which is great to hear. Um, and the impressions are that the combat and the magic system is so much better than Diablo 2, but it is very much that evolution of what a lot of the, I guess, hardcore fans liked about Diablo 2.
Mhm.
But I'm excited. I'm really
I'm so
excited for
excited.
that.
I'm so excited to play later
I
today
will
for sure.
probably be diving in right after this podcast.
I
So yeah,
probably will too. Yeah, I'm actually getting pretty hyped thinking about it, and I have time. I don't have anything to do today. I have all day today, so I'm pretty excited to wait in the queue if I have to. It doesn't matter.
yeah, exactly. Boot it up, go make a sandwich, and see where I'm at.
That's true. Yeah, I would also be hungry too. So yeah, I'll probably boot it up and just probably get some food.
Couple quick super chats I'm going to get to here. We got Hargeet Chani who says, "Dang, we keep getting great games so far this year. Let's hope it keeps going. 2023 is awesome so far."
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, 2023 has been just stacked. Even when we didn't know about Hi-Fi Rush, which came out of nowhere and became a huge hit, like it
Great
was already
game.
looking ridiculous. And then we have Dead Space 2 coming out, landing. Metroid Prime Remastered coming out and landing. Then we have Resident Evil 4 coming out and just being this huge, overwhelming critical success. So
Mm.
yeah, this year's been wild. And then Hogwarts Legacy also kind of had some of that Elden Ring energy where it was like the game, the conversation piece for the games industry for a while. So
For a bit,
man,
yeah, it's kind of died off for a bit, but yeah, I
mhm.
mean, it definitely sold a shit ton. So
Yeah, it
yeah,
definitely made some money. Definitely made a lot of money.
absolutely.
Um, it was one of those games where I had people like hit me up who I haven't talked to in years saying, "Hey, are you playing this?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Good to hear from you, by the way. How you been?"
I have to
All
say that the game really didn't do much for me, but that's I'm still trying to make my way through it. But there's so many other things to play right now, so
yeah, I dropped off at about 25 hours,
it's a
30
long
hours
game.
maybe.
Yeah, it's a long
Yeah.
game, and it's like okay, I think I've seen enough. And my problem with it is that it tutorializes way too long. Like the first several hours is like okay, just give me the goddamn broom already, please.
Yeah, it's one of those games where the first 10 hours is pretty slow. The first 10 hours is a tutorial more or less.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So it asks a lot, but once you get past that then it opens up and once you get the magic, it's definitely fun.
Yeah, the
Um
combat's fun. It feels good.
yeah, the combat does feel good. I was
Mhm.
impressed. All right, so Gene, I wanted to touch a little bit on Xbox Game Pass in 2023. So we know Xbox or the year of 2023 in general is very full, and it's been interesting seeing Xbox become more and more a part of that with Game Pass and some of these bigger releases. So right now we know obviously there was Hi-Fi Rush, we had Atomic Heart, we had Redfall, or these are games basically confirmed for 2023. Redfall, Forza Motorsport, Minecraft Legends, Starfield, Exoprimal, Woe Long Fallen Dynasty, Lies of
Mhm.
P, Ghostwire Tokyo, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and a lot more. So Xbox is trying to have a lot of big pops, and a lot of people are looking at high caliber releases like Redfall and Starfield and saying like, all right, we know Xbox has had aggressive growth targets for Game Pass, but is this the year we start to see some big metrics and some big numbers? Because theoretically, Starfield is going to be the biggest Xbox release of the last decade. That game's going to be absolutely massive. And
Mhm.
so that's going to be a huge test to see, what the growth metrics for Game Pass can be. So do you think games like Redfall and Starfield will have any will move the needle at all for Game Pass in terms of just public perception.
Absolutely, I think it will. I think this is the moment we've been waiting for, right? The first real big, well, Halo Infinite was supposed to be that, but
Yes, Halo Infinite was supposed to be that.
yeah, we all know what happened there, and it was a great game.
Yes,
Don't
it
get me
was.
wrong. I still gave the campaign a 10 out of 10. I love the campaign. Um, but it definitely wasn't like the app that you needed to keep being subscribed to Xbox Game Pass for. Starfield is gonna be different because Starfield, is gonna at least come with at minimum 100 hours of single player playtime, right? And at most probably a couple thousand.
Yeah.
Um, Redfall too, although that's more of a cooperative game and everything like that too. But then the fact that they're saying that it's basically like a Far Cry, cooperative Far Cry, that could be great too. And like Halo Infinite didn't have co-op at launch, and here comes Redfall being a great first-person shooter made by Arcane Studios, being co-op at launch. That like it. Game Pass is great for multiplayer games.
Yes.
We were just talking about Exoprimal. We were talking about how much of a boost Outriders got when that launched. So I really do think that this is the moment that Xbox Game Pass has been waiting for, and I do think that it'll move the needle. Why wouldn't you check out Game Pass after this huge game that everyone's going to be talking about, Starfield, comes out? Because everyone's going to be talking about Starfield. I have no doubt. Bethesda. It's Bethesda. We all laugh about how Bethesda is like janky and everything like that, but it's fucking Bethesda, man. They've made some of the greatest games of all time and the games that we still play today. Like I still kind of want to play Skyrim today, like
Yeah.
that's ridiculous. And I'm still I didn't even like Fallout 4 for the most part, and I still have like 1,000 hours in a game that I thought was mid compared to the other games. So it
Uh,
doesn't matter like what the quality of these games are. We're still gonna play the hell out of them because they are meant to be played so long. So it'll be interesting to see how much a single player game can hold interest in terms of retaining the subscription base. But I do think that we're definitely going to see a spike in subscribers, and I would hope that Xbox would feel comfortable enough to finally like release their subscriber numbers after Starfield comes out. It would be nice to see Xbox have a win and being able to like puff themselves up a little bit because we haven't had that in a while, at least on the Xbox side.
yeah, because a lot of us we know the Game Pass is a great value and it lets us play a lot of games.
And it's doing well too, yeah. So.
When they've had growth, like they've had impressive growth. But we know based on like some of their internal kind of bonus metrics that the growth maybe isn't what they wanted it to be at this point. But on the other side of things, they're building this subscription service around exclusive content in a lot of ways, and they didn't
Mhm.
have a lot of exclusive content for pretty much a full year. And so there was stuff to keep people subscribed. I think they did a
Mhm.
great job curating where they could and getting compelling games, but they didn't have the Starfield, which, like you said, everyone's going to be playing Starfield. Everyone's going to be talking about Starfield for a long time. And as we've seen with other games, Elden Ring is a prime example. If it's the conversation, you're going to appeal to that broad market. And you're going to have your friends saying, all right, I want to play Starfield. How do I get access to it? And then you're going to have your friends in the know say, well,
Mhm.
if you have Game Pass, you can just play it on there. And so I think that has potential to be a huge boost. Redfall,
Mhm.
I'm super stoked for. Like you said, I think co-op games in particular thrive on that. Even games like Back for Blood that didn't get universal critical acclaim, they had a
Mhm.
really good, solid foundation of players because of Game
Mhm.
Pass. So,
Mhm.
like you said with Exoprimal, I think that's a guaranteed. Redfall, I think, is going to boost that as well. I just, as much as it hurts me to say, as someone who loves horror, loves co-op, I don't know that Redfall has huge potential to be like, I need Game Pass right now. I need
Yeah.
to subscribe to
Yeah.
Game Pass right now. And that's
Arcane games don't do that. Arcane games are critical darlings, but they don't like Deathloop didn't really perform all that well. Let's be real.
and we
Um,
as fans, we want Arcane to, get their flowers, have their moment, but that's kind of
Mhm.
been the state of their games. It's not that their games aren't good. It's just it's hard to market that to like a widespread appeal, I think.
Mhm.
But with it being
And I do
multiplayer, I
think
think this
Redfall
will
seems
be
to
their
be their
peak.
attempt to kind of like try to get a little bit more widespread appeal. Um, so it'll be interesting to see how that actually shakes out. I'm looking forward to it, but yeah, I agree with you that I don't think it's going to be the big. It's going to be Starfield. We're all waiting for Starfield. So.
Starfield's going to be it. And then, based on some of the other stuff and timing of these other games, it seems like Microsoft is using this year to hopefully start their cadence of,
Hmm.
getting the pop, having those moments like Starfield that boost the subscriber count, and then maintaining that. 'Cause
Hmm.
obviously that's their goal, and so they're going to need stuff to keep people coming back. Do you think Microsoft is doing enough to secure higher profile third party games to kind of fill the gaps while they wait for first party to start firing on all cylinders, I guess?
Honestly, you look at this list; it's pretty good. Atomic Heart. Well, Atomic Heart didn't really like win that many flowers, but Lies of P,
Liza
Wolong is
P.
interesting. And look, I'm always gonna say Ghostwire Tokyo was pretty good. People definitely slept on that, and it would be great to see Ghostwire Tokyo get the second life on Game Pass. Definitely a great Game Pass game. Check it out. It's very much a checklist open world game, and it came out around the time of Elden Ring, so I think that's what. Horizon Forbidden West wasn't the only victim of the Elden Ring blowout. I think Ghostwire Tokyo came
Uh,
out around the same time, and it's like, okay, well, this is another checklist game. It's like, well, but it's a good checklist game. It feels good, and it's like magic based, so it kind of reminds you of like what Phil Spencer was talking about, possibly bringing back Hexen, and it's like, yeah, Ghostwire Tokyo is kind of like that right now.
yeah, exactly.
Um, but
So I
yeah, it's nice to see them getting into cadence finally. Hi-Fi Rush is obviously a huge gem in
mhm.
the Game Pass field, and I wish more people would be playing it. But I do think that it does seem like that this year is the year that they start having some cadence and some pretty good third party exclusives, third party drops too. So it's looking pretty healthy. I'm, last year I got some heat for saying that I unsubscribed from Game Pass, and it was really just like 2 months that I was unsubscribed. And it's like I need money for those 2 months, and I resubscribed again. Part of the reason why I stay subscribed to Game Pass is because it's a great way for me to access the Gears of War trilogy.
Yes.
Uh, and a lot of backwards compat games that I might not necessarily want to buy straight up. The Xbox is such a great back compat machine. And so that's what I use it for, definitely. And that's definitely what I use Game Pass for. So yeah, just making sure that it's back catalog with like a lot of good stuff, and yeah, we need that first party a quarter cadence going, Phil, pretty soon.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I've seen a lot of people talk about, what Xbox Game Pass needs to do to
Mm.
boost its numbers or hit whatever targets it's going for. And I think this year is pretty much the blueprint for what they do need to do. Because I think they've done a really good job with partnerships, with high profile indies, with third party developers. We
Yeah.
had Monster Hunter Rise earlier this year from Capcom. We have Exoprimal coming up from Capcom. So they do have partners who definitely see value in it, and higher profile partners that see value in it. And I think that speaks volumes to what that can do and how comfortable Capcom feels about it, because they've gone back. They did Monster Hunter World in Game Pass. They launched Monster Hunter Rise in Game Pass. Now they're doing Exoprimal. So I think for specific games, I don't think it's a one size fits all, like every single game that goes into Game Pass will be an undeniable hit, but I think they've done a really smart job of like having clever partnerships that make sense. Because as
Yeah, and
much
a good cache of diverse games too,
yeah,
right?
exactly. And as much as I joked about like it, getting Elden Ring day one in Game Pass, what that would mean for the subscription service. But I also
Mm,
said I bet that would cost like $500 million, that deal. And
mm,
people are like, no, that figure's high. And then we see Elden Ring do over $1 billion. So
hmm.
there are times where, as much as it would be a dope and it would boost subscriber count, like Elden Ring in Game Pass would have boosted subscribers for sure.
For
Um,
sure.
the asking price probably higher than they want to spend. Probably not
Hmm.
guaranteed to get that return back. But I think for the most part they've done a good job. And I think once they have those pops with Starfield, if we get more of those every 3-4 months, I think
Hmm.
Xbox will be in good shape to kind of just keep that growth going.
Yeah, it's hard. Look, I work for a newspaper. We're in a subscription business too, and it's difficult. The Washington Post has been losing subscribers, at least in the past year, and that's a problem it's a perpetual problem. We want subscriptions. The people get into the subscription service business because they think that it's a perpetual money making machine. And it could be, but you also have to be a perpetual content making machine too.
Yeah, people don't
And
want to give you money for nothing. Like
yeah, it has to be of some value for that person at that time. It's crazy. You know.
Yes, because again, I think that's the thing is like a lot of us who are playing video games and looking for what's new, they look at Game Pass and say, there's too much for me to even play. Like there are so many games I want to play that I just can't. But like you touched on, it needs to be that value for every person at every time. And that's the tough balance is like putting out good content that checks all of those boxes and being consistent. And it's tough. It's a really tough balance, and you really do have to work for it. And that's why I think Microsoft has been so aggressive about acquiring studios and teams is so that they can keep that machine churning, baby. We got to keep people engaged with the Xbox ecosystem. But I'm excited. I'm excited about Game Pass this year. I'm excited to see what the numbers look like. And I think after this year, after calendar year 2023, I wonder, like you said, if they're going to share some numbers. And if they don't share some numbers, like what that means for like, okay, we've had the big, like our biggest game in here, and it didn't do what we needed.
Though? What happens after Starfield though? That's the next question, right? And hopefully we'll find out in the June show, right? The showcase. Hopefully we'll start seeing Avowed. Hopefully we'll start seeing where Hellblade is because that was announced a long time ago. Hopefully we can finally get an update on the Fable project. You know, all of these games are very, very diverse. And like these are and some of them are classic IP that Xbox didn't do a great job of like maintaining, and it'd be great to see something like Fable come back. You know.
Yes, exactly. A lot of like Xbox fans, because Xbox does have a really good stable of IP and a lot of franchises that people love.
Yeah.
Fable is a prime example. Perfect Dark, another great example. And so much like Capcom, I think they're kind of revisiting that in some ways, like finding ways to revisit and reinvent these franchises. And
Xbox definitely needs the Capcom era for sure.
I want them all to hit. I want Perfect Dark to come out and just be an unquestionable hit. Same with Fable. I want it to like take me back to playing the original Fable. And while that has shortcomings, I still fondly remember experiencing that world for the first time and playing a game that I had never played before. It didn't feel like anything else. And I want Xbox to get back in that position. And I think, you know, as much as people are tired of hearing, oh, just keep waiting, I think that wait is coming soon, coming to an end soon.
Our patience is kind of running out. It's getting pretty tired for even content creators to say, you know, it's coming soon. It's coming soon. I can't imagine how much it'd be like for Xbox content creators to be like, we're almost there, guys. You know?
Just hang in there in the meantime. And as someone who plays on everything, the wait hasn't been too bad for me. But it's an exciting time. It's an exciting year for Game Pass. Before
I haven't checked out Halo Infinite Season 3. That's another thing I still need to check out too. So
I finally checked it out. Yeah, last week I talked to Snowbike Mike about it, and he was really digging it, and so that actually inspired me to reinstall it. And I dove in this past week, and it feels so much better to play, generally speaking.
Cool. I'll check it out.
The loop is there. They have the per match XP. You have performance-based XP, so you get all of the shiny number feedback at the end of the match. The new map is great. The new weapon is great. It felt good. It felt good to play Halo and just have a good time playing Halo, and that was it. It wasn't like worrying about what's next or having people stress about the roadmap. It was just Halo feels good to play.
Exactly. Sometimes all you need is a few good Halo matches. You know, there's nothing better than that.
Anytime I feel down on Halo Infinite, I just get my hands on it because
it's a good game. It's a good game. It just needs content. That's it. You know,
it's the best feeling Halo for sure. It's the best. It feels so good to play. Couple super chats here. Hargeet Chani says Dead Rising 5 as an Xbox exclusive. Yep. Yeah, let's go. Let's do it. Go back to that well, dig it up. Gold Shell says, just saying hi. D4 may be my game of the year. It's great. Oh, game of the year already, just based on the beta. Okay.
Oh, D4. Okay, yeah. All right.
Assassin says Capcom once again proving not once but twice this week with RE4 Remake and Exoprimal that they're a top tier publisher. Warms my heart. Capcom, not only are they creating great games right now, but then you see those headlines where they are increasing the employees' pay because of that. And stuff like that is exciting because obviously I want to see these publishers do great, but I want to see these publishers do great because of what it means for the people there. And so if a publisher's making a bunch of money, cool. but it's nice that they're, like using that success and investing in their own people to keep them. Because I think once you get that team that is delivering on this level, and you want to keep them around. And so I'm glad to
Yeah.
see that Capcom is actually investing in people. So
Yeah, yeah. I love to see Capcom. I wish Square Enix would have the same energy, And Square Enix is is doing well, but they also have a lot of duds. So it's like Square Enix, Capcom is like the really confident guy that walks into the bar, and the Square Enix is the guy on the first day who's just like trying different personalities, just like trying to do different shit or whatever like that. And it's like just try to impress everything. It's like, dude, just be yourself, man.
just be
You know?
yeah. Take a
Yeah.
breath and just be
Yeah.
yourself. It's cool.
Calm down, be yourself. You like you're here. Just do what you go. Just do what you do best, man.
You're gonna crush it, I promise. Okay. Super chat from Face23 BKNY says, I do believe a PS5 Pro will release. Tom Henderson has a good track record, so PS5 and PS5 Pro, and if Xbox releases another console, they will have 3 SKUs, the Series S, Series X, and the Series XL. I don't know how I feel about that naming convention, but too many consoles from Xbox. So yeah, that transitions beautifully into our next topic here, which
Good
is
segue. Yeah.
the mid-generation refreshes, because as Face touched on here, Insider Gaming, Tom Henderson over there, put out a report claiming that the PS5 Pro is in development and could be targeting a 2024 release. This comes after some claims that PlayStation was working on a PS5 with a detachable or an external disk drive, so they could basically create a cheaper, easier to ship version of the PlayStation 5. So all of this is kind of stacking, and now that has got a lot of people talking about, all right, do we need a mid-gen refresh? We've seen them in the past. We've seen the Xbox One X. We've seen the PS4 Pro. That generation arguably started on a lower note in terms of hardware. It was already underperforming out of the gate, and a lot of people are looking at the PS5 and the Series X and these dev kits and these new engines and saying, this generation is off to a slow start. Is this what we need? So first off, Gene, do you think PlayStation is actively planning to release a PS5 Pro as soon as next year?
I wouldn't be surprised at all. We just went through that last year, and there are different SKUs that some of these console makers make, and it's a good way to have double revenue on different SKUs. To the point of where our generation has been slow. And I don't think that the full potential of either the PS5 or the Xbox Series consoles have been unlocked yet. So
Yeah, I think
it is a
that's
little,
safe to say.
yeah, yeah. So it is a little bizarre to think like, okay, well now we need a more powerful PS5, and it's like, well, God of War Ragnarok was a big game for PS5 last year, and it was a PS4 game. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
it
ran on the
was pretty,
PS4 just fine.
and it ran really well on the PS4. So like, shout out to Sony Santa Monica and the Sony first party studios. They really know the PlayStation architecture inside out. But it was still really, really held back by just being a PS4 game. And so when are we gonna start seeing PS5 games? And would they even take advantage of the Pro? Like, we don't need 8K. Who has 8K TVs out here?
Not me. That's too rich for
Yeah.
my blood, man.
Same
Can't
here,
swing
man.
that.
And I don't know if I even, well, maybe I would tell the difference after I saw it. Like I used to say I couldn't tell the difference between 120 hertz and 60 hertz. And then once I started actually playing in 120 hertz, I was like, okay, I actually see the
Yeah, then
difference.
once you're on the other side of it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I feel it.
But
I
I'm
feel it
not.
now.
Well, a lot of us aren't on the other side of it yet. But it's different than the PS4 Pro generation, where a lot of us did have 4K sets. A lot of us did have 4K sets for a long time. It was nice to finally get a SKU, the Pro and the Xbox One X, and that the Xbox One X was my re-entry into Xbox ecosystem. Xbox
Nice.
One obviously was I didn't feel like I needed it. But once the Xbox One X came out, I was like, okay, that looks interesting. And Red Dead Redemption 2 is 4K on that one and not on the PS4
Yeah.
Pro. So
Yeah.
I actually bought the Xbox One X just to play Red Dead Redemption 2 in 4K, and it still looks amazing. I still think it looks great in 30 FPS. It's great, and that's when I was able to finally go back and play like the old, like Dead Rising 3, Rise, like all the classic,
Yeah, all
you
the
know,
classics.
all the classic Xbox One exclusive, Quantum Break.
Crimson Dragon, dude. Did you go into
Yeah.
that one?
I have not gotten into that one,
Okay.
no. Yeah. But, I did play Quantum Break. I love that one too. Halo 5, of course. Yeah, so it could be a reason for folks yeah, but that's a very niche audience though. The Xbox One X was also a niche audience too. But it could be a way for folks who've been waiting to be like, okay, well maybe now I can jump into PS5 or Xbox, and I might as well just get the bigger version as well. But yeah, I don't next year seems early, at least in terms of the market. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do release it though. But I don't know what they would do. But then the reason why I'm not surprised, I wouldn't be surprised because they released PSVR 2 and no one was really asking for a new VR headset. You know?
They bet a lot on the PSVR 2.
Yeah, they bet a lot and they're selling it for a lot and nobody's talking about it right now.
It definitely doesn't have the same pop, I feel like, that the original had, because I feel
It
like
didn't. Yeah.
when that was like a novel idea in the console space, like, oh wow, a video game console with VR.
Hmm.
Outside of the
It's fun. Yeah.
Virtual Boy, we haven't seen that. So
Hmm.
that was exciting. It was new. PlayStation was massive I mean, PlayStation still is massive, but PS4 was at its peak. Like, PS4
Hmm.
was just the console to have. Everyone had it. And so it's interesting to think about the PlayStation 5 Pro coming as soon as next year. Because, like we touched on, most of these games haven't even had the native versions on these
Hmm.
consoles. A lot of
Hmm.
these games that are being developed in Unreal Engine 5 haven't shipped. We haven't really seen what's coming. And so the idea of a PlayStation 5 Pro from PlayStation, well, I could see it. Um, and I imagine it would be a way to take back the quote unquote power dynamic, because there's been speculation and people, quote unquote, insiders who've talked about PlayStation being caught off guard by not only the dual SKU spec of the Xbox Series X and S, but the fact that the power that they're putting into the Series X, as it were. And
Hmm.
so a lot of people are saying that, that was the reason. And so I could see PlayStation being like, hey, well, here's the PlayStation 5 Pro if you want the most powerful console. And then I could see them just using the digital edition and saying, all right, well, here's the digital edition. And we're selling a disc drive if you want that as well. And so they'll be more in line with Xbox with like two primary SKUs in some way. And that will be able to have like a cheap $350 ish, hypothetically priced console.
Hmm.
But with that being said, if this is hypothetically what the plan is, Xbox is also probably going to have to be doing something as well then. None of this stuff doesn't happen in a bubble, and this stuff
Hmm.
doesn't really happen without context from a competitor. So do you think Xbox would then answer and we'd get more Xbox SKUs as soon as next year?
Xbox seems to be the platform holder that loves to have different SKUs, the more than Nintendo even. And Nintendo is the one that came up with the new Nintendo 3DS XL. So,
Oh,
Nintendo is the one who actually had the XL thing, not Xbox. So, but Xbox has always been a fan of having different SKUs, going back to was it the original Xbox didn't have a different Xbox, but Xbox 360 did. Xbox
yeah, Xbox
360 had
360 had
Xbox
two at
360 has several different visions.
was no, the Elite wasn't at launch, right? No, the Elite wasn't at launch, or was it at launch? Now I'm questioning that rollout.
I'm forgetting, but there was the one without the hard drive, and there was one with the hard drive. Of course, we all got the one with the hard drive, and then there was the black one, and then there was the Xbox 360e at the very tail end. And
Yeah, that one is slick. I still have that one out in the living room. It's
I don't have that one. I want to get one. I want to get one just to collect it, and just to have a good Xbox 360 going on, in the house. But
yeah.
yeah, so it does feel like Xbox would probably do that too. I'm not going to touch the Series S, the conversation about whether it's holding the generation back or not. I'm not a developer, but it does seem interesting that it'll be for different SKUs. But then again, if you're developing for PC, you're always doing that anyways. You're developing for the 490 cards and the 1080 cards too. So
Yeah, that's the interesting thing that I see a lot of people talk about. Obviously, there is the belief that the Series S is potentially holding back development, but then again, if they're developing games for PS4, that's not the case, because there's a
yeah,
notable difference between the Xbox One and the Series S just across the board in terms of
absolutely.
performance and what it can do. And like you said, developers are targeting low spec, mid spec, and high spec PCs. So theoretically, the Series S should fall in there. And now we have developers, because of the success of the Steam Deck, they're targeting the Steam Deck as well. And
Mm-hmm.
that hardware is phenomenally lower performing than the Series S hardware for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. Yeah.
So there's all of these dynamics and all these variables, and you see people say, "Well, this is holding back the gen," or "We can't do this because of X, Y, and Z." Are we really going to have a world where, with these mid-gen refreshes, we're going to have the Xbox Series S Pro, the Xbox Series X Pro, and the Xbox Series S and X together? Like, if they did a mid-generation refresh, would it only be for the Series X? I guess is more what I'm saying.
I think it'd probably just be for Series X. I think we would just have to be like, you know what, the Series S is just what it is, you know. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
I think it would have to be an Xbox One Series X or whatever we would call it. I don't know. I like what they're going with the series naming convention. I wish they didn't call it Xbox One to Xbox One. That's it. So
yeah. When they first announced the naming convention, the Series S and the Series X, my initial thought was, oh, this feels like they're trying to like get on beat with like phone marketing and that kind
mhm,
of like, this is the S series, this is the X series, here's the
mhm,
X Pro, here's the X2, here's the X Ultra, however they want to decide to move forward. But I felt like when they did the Series S and X, they said, this is the groundwork for how we're going to iterate on hardware. And
mhm,
originally I thought, well, maybe because they're doing that, they're going to iterate on hardware faster. And we're going to have like cell phone subscriptions. And they had Xbox All Access, which literally was a 2-year subscription service. I was like,
mhm,
damn, are they going to crank out like
mhm,
new consoles every 2 years that are iterative upgrades? And
mhm,
so if this report from Tom Henderson is true and PlayStation is actively working on a PlayStation 5 Pro, I don't imagine that Xbox is going to sit by, because they've already said, like, we will not be beat on price and power. Like, that's their
mhm,
whole messaging mantra for this generation. So if PlayStation is trying to get the power dynamic back, then Xbox has to go to the drawing board and put out a console that's even more powerful, because
mhm.
that's a selling point for their portfolio right now. So I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this room or this report from Insider Gaming about this, because the timing seems way too convenient, given everything that happened the last couple of years.
Mhm. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head in terms of like mobile marketing too, because Sarah Bond is an alumni of T-Mobile, and
Ah, okay.
what she was able to do there was having all these different like payment plans and everything like that, and like you can see that being adopted across the Xbox. So it'd be like I wouldn't be surprised if Xbox came out with their Pro version console first, if they announced it first before PS5. You know, I feel like Xbox has found a good strategy in terms of being first. You know, that's what they did with the Xbox 360, and they were not first when it came to the PS4 and the Xbox One. I think it came around at the same time, but I think Xbox does see some, you know, and they announced the Xbox Series X first before the PlayStation 5. You know,
Yep.
so I wouldn't be surprised if they have something cooking and they just came out with a new machine
Holiday
before.
2023, Xbox Series X Pro.
Watch Jeff Keighley will probably have it. So
Oh
Jeff
god.
Keighley will probably have it. Yeah.
So I guess I have to ask then, like, I know the average person wouldn't want refreshes every couple years, but would you? Would you buy if PlayStation and Xbox were
Of
like, we're
course,
gonna
of
iterate every
course.
2 years? Would you be in line every 2 years to upgrade?
Of course, because I'm that guy. Because
Yeah.
I'm an enthusiast. Because you know, I have friends who buy the new iPhone every year. We're obviously way past the point where you need a new iPhone like every year. Probably just need to get one like every 5 years. But I still have friends who get one every year. So I'm that version of that guy. You know, and like the iPhones are more expensive than these fucking consoles, which is crazy, right? But yeah, like if they sold a $600 PS5 Pro, I'd just be like, yeah, totally. You know, I would ask Sony to send me one, basically. But would I buy one? I probably still would because I bought the PS4 Pro right away. As soon as the Xbox One X landed, I bought that right away too. Um, yeah, as soon as the PS4 Pro, the console of a PS4 Pro, I was like, I want that. I want the most powerful PS4. That'd be awesome.
Yep. When they did that for the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, As soon as I saw that power marketing, I was like, yeah, all right, I need my, because again, I could just go PC and deck out a PC, but I've been a console heathen. And you touched on all of the iterative Nintendo consoles. I was so terrible with the 3DS. I bought every single iteration of the 3DS. And so
Yeah,
I
I
know that I would
too.
do the same with Xbox. Anything that Xbox put out or PlayStation put out or Nintendo put out, I'd buy it.
I have
And
5 Nintendo Switches. Like
why?
why? They're all the same system. Like there's no power differential between any of them, and I still have 5 of them. So yeah, like I would get a PS5 if there was any kind of power differential. Like I would get a PS5 Slim. You know, if
Yeah.
like if it had no power differential at all. And I already have an Xbox Series S and X. I have
Same.
both.
Same.
You know?
I already have the Series X and S, and if they did 2 iterative refreshes of both, I would buy both. And
Yeah, I
again,
just
I'm
got a
part of
new
the
Xbox.
problem. Sure, maybe I'm facilitating this unnecessary need to upgrade, but I do really wonder with these reports coming out, like what the actual timing is going to be. I think a lot of us originally went into this generation expecting a mid-gen refresh potentially sooner, just because of the nature of the industry having those hardware marketing pops. But then when there was the chip shortage, when games were getting delayed, all of these things were up in the air, I think a lot of us reevaluated how they would approach that. And now, according to this, it seems like maybe they're not. Maybe they're going full steam ahead. We had a plan for a PS5 Pro X number of years afterwards. We're still doing it. It's still going to hit the shelves.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we
I'll be
might
in
have a
line.
world, Gene, where we have the PS5 Pro and the new Switch launching, and then again, maybe even Xbox in the mix. So there's a world where all 3 of those things are happening in the next year.
Yeah, we'll just be broke motherfuckers for next year
Yeah,
probably too.
oh man. Quick shout out to Assassin, who gifted 5 channel memberships. Appreciate you. That's awesome. Huge shout out to the
Hey,
folks who got that. Appreciate
thank
all
you.
your support for the show. Gene, are you ready to talk about the Activision Blizzard acquisition?
Never. Let's go.
We're not going to spend too much time on it because we talked about it in depth last week. We talked about the big developments. Every single week there's headlines, there's drama surrounding it. There have been some developments this week, and I'll give you the cliff notes. Basically, PlayStation's mad that they're losing Call of Duty, and Xbox is making good faith deals with a bunch of companies to say, hey, we're still going to play nice. Here's a 10-year contract for you. Here's a 10-year contract for you. Who else wants one? And they're going to every single cloud partner that they can and signing these deals to say, hey, we're chill. We're good. It's going to be easy breezy. No, nothing to look at here. PlayStation on the other side, just screaming about Call of Duty. Like, that is the one point that they are just banging home so hard, is that, well, we might lose Call of Duty, and that's bad for the entire games industry. Where are you at with just the state of all of these developments in the deal itself?
You know what? I have barely been paying attention to it.
You're
Mostly because not necessarily I'm tired of it, and I am tired of it, but mostly because I'm more interested in how these things affect the creativity of video games, and the creation of video games. And right now, this whole deal is in such a limbo that it's really hard to tell, like what it means for anything. What does it mean for the future Call of Duty? What does it mean for other Activision Blizzard games going forward? We don't know that, and there's nothing really going on there. So that's kind of the reason why I haven't really been paying attention, because I am less interested in the business side. There's a reason why I'm in the style section in the Washington Post and not the business section. I don't want to be a business reporter. I've been a business reporter. It's boring as shit. I hate it. I do not like reporting on business. You won't catch me on Bloomberg. At the Bloomberg terminal. That's just not stuff that I'm interested in. So mostly that's just where I'm at with the ABK deal, and in terms of paying attention, and whatever the firebombs Lulu Cheng Meservi decides to throw out on the Twitter timeline. We're mutuals, so that's she's probably like my information line right now, in terms of like where, like, how things are going, and how frantic she's responding to things. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should be paying attention to this too. So
Yeah, she's definitely been very vocal about the deal, and she's definitely had some fun retorts with people reporting on the deal and
Yeah, yeah,
their
yeah, yeah.
inaccuracies about the deal.
She's calling out the journalists, and it's like, wow, like it's an interesting tactic. It feels like it's ripped straight out of politics, the politics handbook of just calling out journalists, because the games industry has never really done that. But Lulu comes from the Substack community, where she was engaged with a lot of like political writers over there too. So I think she kind of like learned or absorbed or was part of that ecosystem of how to engage the information ecosystem of how to engage with information like with the public. So she's doing interesting things in terms of like what communications is doing. So that's why I pay attention. But that's why I pay attention to her.
Yeah, it's been an interesting saga to watch unfold, and I'm glad you touched on like one of the more interesting conversations for me is what this all means for the games and the people
Mhm.
making the games on the other side of it. Because, the selling point of Xbox game studios right now has been these teams will be empowered to make the best games that they can. They'll
Mhm.
have more resources, they'll have more time. And that idea to me is exciting. When I hear a company, even though they are a multi-billion dollar company, say like, "Hey, come work for us. It's good for you." I also understand it's good for their business. They're trying to make money at the end of the day. But I still want to see these companies invest in the people. And Activision right now, we know isn't the gold standard of where to work or how to handle employees.
Mhm.
Activision Blizzard have been in the headlines for years because it doesn't seem like, generally speaking, it's the best place to work in the games industry because of leadership, because of all of the ways they've handled, these sexual misconduct allegations, the way they've handled unions in the past. It doesn't sound like the most, you know, the best place to create. And so
Mhm.
you have a lot of talented, passionate people there. And I think about, what this deal could mean on the other side. If they do have a place where they're better supported, have more time, they don't have to worry about putting out an annual Call of Duty every single year. Because if we don't, Activision can't sustain itself. And that's kind of
Mhm.
the situation that they put themselves in. I get excited about what that means for some of these IP and some of these teams who can have the freedom to create. And so, like you said, the business element of it, like I want a business to be healthy because, like you said, what it could potentially mean for the games. But otherwise,
Absolutely.
I'm not invested. Like I don't care how much more money or how much less money you're making because that doesn't impact me. But when it
Mhm.
starts impacting the teams, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, yeah. Part of it is that I'm not really interested in that many Activision Blizzard games. Obviously, Diablo is the only Blizzard game that I actually like. And as far as the Activision side, I like Call of Duty. I play Call of Duty every once in a while. I haven't actually played. I haven't touched Modern Warfare 2 at all, which is crazy. I'm usually totally down to play the campaigns, but I haven't touched it at all this time around. I do plan to eventually, but yeah, yeah, it's exactly like you said. Like, I just want to know how this will affect the teams and this will affect the development cycles going forward. But none of those answers can be really none of those questions can be answered right now because everything is just very procedural. So part of the reason I used to be a court reporter, right? I do think that some of the coverage of the ABK deal is a little too granular, and some of these stuff you don't need to report on because it's just procedural stuff.
Every
Um,
quote is like a headline for a day,
every quote
basically.
is a headline, and it doesn't need to be that. I'm not even sure how well these stories are doing for people, but I guess they must be doing well for like folks like other sites.
They have to
But
be because, my God, the number of headlines we see about just the most benign things in this, these
exactly, exactly.
proceedings.
Yeah, but like when you want to report on in what's going on in courts and like public documents, you don't need to like do every little thing. But it is important to like find out like what the CMA feels like and like what the FTC what was feeling like too. Those are big, significant like milestones within this process. But in between that, there's a lot that's just kind of noise, and that a lot of that stuff I'm just tuning out because like I know that's not important, and I know that it will be pretty inconsequential. A lot of these quotes that people are throwing around, it's like these are lawyers. That's not Jim Ryan saying it. These are lawyers that are trying to speak for Jim Ryan, but they're saying things in their own way, and they'll just say whatever. So
Yeah, that's what I think. What's been interesting is when we look at like, God, the like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial and these other
exactly,
trials that we like
exactly.
can't look away from, and we see all the little details, all the arguments, and then you
Mhm.
realize like some of this stuff is so petty just across the
Mhm.
board. Like
Mhm.
they're really trying to leverage themselves and their position in whatever way they can, in any way they can, and that makes
Mhm.
everything very like dramatic and inflammatory when like really they just want this case to go the way that they want, and they have
That's it. That's it.
anecdotal details that they can share. Oh no, we're doomed. We can't do this. Like this can't happen.
Mhm.
And then Microsoft on the other side saying, "Man, like how do we compete? Like this is how we can actually compete with PlayStation, who's just been dominating us, guys. Look at this graph chart. They're just kicking our ass over here. What are
Mhm.
we supposed to do?" And so, yeah, a lot of it is like you said, procedural, and it's just we get this big beat over and over, and it's just it's exhausting. So when there is
It's
like
very
a
exhausting.
when there is an
Yeah.
actual big beat, when somebody's like, "Hey, I think we're gonna block this," that becomes that the impact is just lowered because I'm just so tired of the entire situation. I'm like, "Oh God, I
Yeah,
just want this to
exactly.
be done."
That's why you never see me covering it because it's just like, like I'll wait till there's a decision. I'll cover that. So,
Exactly. And
uh,
then
and again, I don't mean to throw other reporters' work under the bus. If that's what it sounds like, I apologize. I'm just saying, a lot of this is pretty procedural, and good for you guys for staying on top of it. But it's not for me. That's it.
yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah,
Obviously I'm running an Xbox podcast. I'm in the games industry, so it's interesting.
you
Generally
have to. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because you're serving a niche audience, so you have to
it's
do that. Yeah.
genuinely interesting what it could mean, what the implications can be, but I don't have the energy to dive into every headline every day, to
Yeah.
dissect like a quote from Jim Ryan or Lena Khan or whoever about what this means. And
Yeah, and it's definitely something that I can't even cheer for because I'm just a journalist. I can't be like, yeah, I want Microsoft to do this or I want Sony to do that. And plus, I'm a Nintendo fanboy. That's pretty much it. If I do have a bias, it's Nintendo.
Oh man. All right, so we're going to jump into some community Q&A that's related here to this. This is from Neo Nuke who says, "Do you think the way Lulu from Activision does her messaging is refreshing and human, or is it a try-hard way of memeing and hello fellow kids way of swaying the gamers to accepting the corporate side of this merger?"
That's a great question, and we kind of touched on it earlier. I do think that her intent is to be refreshing and a human. And I've watched a lot of her previous appearances on podcasts and like talks because I'm interested in her as a spokesperson, and because I do find her communication style very interesting, and I do see that it's very consistent with how she views things. She does want to say things in a very blunt way. She believes in the idea of saying things imperfectly, uh, rather than perfectly, because she believes that is more human. Like, and people would relate to you more if you kind of mess up in your messaging. So that's why when she was tweeting about how Sony is quote unquote the first of us, like that, like first of all, that tweet fucking broke my brain because of how bad it was. It's really really cringy, right? It's super cringy, but I think she intended it to be that cringy. I think she knew how stupid Sony is the first of us sounds, and she says, "I'm going with it because because I'm still thinking about it to this day." That's how effective her message was. That it was so stupid. But I'm still thinking about it today. I think that's the intended effect. Like you remember what I was talking about, right?
Mhm.
First of us, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, but if she says something else about like how Sony is doing this, how Sony's that, we probably wouldn't remember it at all. So I do think that what she's doing is very intentional. That she does want to stick her message in our brains somehow, and her attempt is to kind of yeah, like she's aware that she's doing a fellow kids thing. I think there's a difference between doing the fellow kids cringe stuff and being a little bit aware of the cringe that you're posting, and cringe posting with intention.
I think we all deserve the freedom to cringe post every once in a while. That's where I
Absolutely.
stand. I see
Yeah.
people say like, "Oh, well, she's a lawyer, she shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z." And yeah, maybe there's a certain way you should historically carry yourself. I
Mhm.
think I agree that right now she's just trying to win the court of public opinion. And if she
Mhm.
feels like the messaging beat is like, "Hey, people on the internet are mad at Sony because they're making this deal take longer and people just want to be on the other side of it," she can
Mhm.
post a meme with the dude sticking the stick in his bike spokes and falling
Yeah,
over and be like,
and it was kind
"Haha,
of funny. But
that's
look,
PlayStation."
this talk about how a lawyer should conduct themselves. Where have you been for the last few years? have you not seen the lawyers how they conduct themselves in the U.S. political news cycle? Like they've been like, look at Rudy Giuliani is a lawyer, and look at how he was conducting himself, right?
Uh-huh.
So so this idea that she should be all buttoned up and everything like that, it's gone. It's gone. She's doing what the modern information news ecosystem rewards. You know?
Yeah, and so you can either be in touch with that and understand what you're doing, lean into the audience and the community, and whether or not her intention is genuine, I don't know. I can't really say. I imagine probably in some capacity, but I also understand that she's looking out for the best interests of Activision Blizzard. And
Yeah,
this
or the
and
shareholders that want the sale to go through. You know?
exactly. She has, people are going to be very upset, and there's going to be a lot of money at stake if this deal doesn't go through. So, it's in her best interest to, get the people on her side, get the gamers on her side, and be like, hey, there's an easy fix here, PlayStation. Ball's in your court. Everyone
Mhm.
else is being cool. Why are you being so uncool about Call of Duty? And I guess that'll be
Yeah.
my final question about this topic for you is, why is PlayStation so fixated on Call of Duty of everything in this deal? That is they don't care really about the cloud. I shouldn't say they don't care, but they're not screaming about the cloud. They're screaming about Call of Duty.
I think it's less because we all know that Call of Duty is going to be on PlayStation. Come on, that's not the issue here. I think the issue is they just don't want to see Xbox succeed. That's it. That's it.
I
That's it. Like they just don't want Xbox to gain any more power. If Xbox was trying to acquire Super Mario, which would never happen, like I feel like Sony would also try to do something to stop that too. I think it's really not less about like what we can keep for Sony, but what we can take away from Xbox. And that's why all of these delays and all of these arguments or whatever is just draining Xbox's legal resources, and it's infinite. Xbox, it's Microsoft, right?
Yeah, they have
But
a
but
squad.
but but they're wasting a lot of time on this too, and time is money. You know, the more the leadership is distracted by this, the less that they'll be focused on other stuff too. So.
And that's interesting. That's an interesting idea and an interesting topic regarding this deal that we don't really talk about is that this could be a PlayStation business play that says we understand this is going to be expensive legally for Microsoft, and if we can continue to drag this out for as long as possible, like that's X number of dollars that they can't invest into games or whatever.
Mhm.
And it could be that. It could be something as like kind of cutthroat and ruthless as that is that we're just trying to drag this out for as long as we possibly can because we want it
Mhm.
to cost Microsoft a lot of money as a punishment for you taking Call of Duty because a lot of it is like PlayStation looks at not that distant past and looks at the 360, looks at
Mhm.
what Call of Duty did for the Xbox 360
It
generation.
did, yeah,
It
yeah, it
won
did.
over mindshare. It won over a lot of in the US in particular. That was the dominating platform.
I've
360,
always thought of Call of Duty as an Xbox game. I always
yeah.
have.
And the
Yeah.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2 hype surrounding that and having the exclusive content for 360, like everyone was playing Xbox. Everyone was playing Xbox in the US. And that was just this huge thing. And PlayStation, coming off the back of the PS2, somehow fumbled the ball with the
Mhm.
PS3 and they felt it. They felt that market share slip. And I think they understand what this could mean again
They
for
never want that
Xbox
to happen again. They
in the
never want that to
US.
happen again, yeah.
And so I think they're doing, yeah, everything in their power to ensure that Xbox has no opportunity to kind of steal that mind share and market share back.
Mhm, mhm. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, because, Xbox was known as a shooter platform, but, that might have narrowed their audience, but it also expanded their audience within the ga wi within, the quote unquote "hardcore gamers" or the people or not even hardcore gamers, there's a lot of casual players who just play Call of Duty and that's it, you
Yeah.
know?
And they bought an
Uh
Xbox because that was
And they
where you
bought an
played Call of
Xbox for that
Duty.
because the Xbox Live ecosystem was better. Xbox Live just worked better. A lot of people were on Xbox Live. Nobody was really on PSN back in the day. It really wasn't until PS4 that the multiplayer for on the PlayStation side started to get more standardized. I
Mhm.
have Diablo 3 on PlayStation 4. On the Xbox. That's strange. But my friends were on PS4 at that time. But in the seventh generation, the 360 generation, it was always Xbox. Nobody was playing on PlayStation 3. I'm sorry.
And it was
You know?
we saw a weird shift, yeah, because
Yeah.
there was a divide when the Xbox One and PS4 were out, because a lot of my friends who had played on 360 primarily just got a PlayStation, and they're
Hmm.
like,
It's
and there
weird.
wasn't crossplay wasn't really a thing at the time, so there was this hard divide between like our core group who played every
Mhm.
night and some of our buddies we'd played stuff like Halo and Call of Duty with. They were on PlayStation 4 and we couldn't play together. And that
Yeah,
really
all of a sudden
like
I just wasn't playing Halo with my buddies anymore because nobody had an Xbox One.
mhm. So yeah,
It
that
sucks.
it didn't have that same energy that the 3 launched and the Reach launched, where it was like, "Yo, everyone already has an Xbox. We're playing some Halo, baby." It
Mm.
became you have to convince your friend to buy an Xbox so you can play Halo now. And I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah, yeah,
"Oh, that's a
exactly. Yeah,
bummer."
yeah, yeah. Fortunately, a lot of those games are on PC, but yeah, I just don't have friends to play on Xbox anymore, which sucks.
Oh, so Xbox is closing some ground, I think, in a lot of ways.
Mm.
And when I look at this deal, when I look at Call of Duty in particular, PlayStation has also just had this consistent revenue stream that is Call of Duty. And that was like money for little. I mean, they would spend millions on marketing every year, don't get me wrong. They would spend millions on, exclusive maps and content, but they weren't paying for development in most cases. They weren't paying for a bulk of this. So what this was is, hey, everyone has a PlayStation, everyone's buying Call of Duty, so they're going to buy Call of Duty on PlayStation, and we get that 30% revenue cut. Boom.
Yeah,
All of these
yeah.
Call of Duty sales, that's just free money for us every
Mhm,
single year. And then when you
mhm,
have a possibility where, oh, it's still going to be on PlayStation, but what if PlayStation isn't the dominating console anymore? What if
mhm,
more people look at Game Pass, look at the value of Xbox, and play Call
mhm.
of Duty on Xbox? Then we are losing that huge chunk of guaranteed revenue every single year. And we
You
don't
do
want
bring up
that.
you do really bring up a great point about how Call of Duty was so foundational for the success of the Xbox 360. So if Xbox once again was able to regain its notoriety, or its being known for being a Call of Duty console, that's a huge blow to PlayStation.
Hmm. But yeah, that's some.
Especially since the PlayStation is still in the first party, doesn't have multiplayer games, and they're trying to change that. Maybe they're overdoing it by doing 10 live service games, and I really hope that they're reevaluating that strategy. But PlayStation isn't really known for its multiplayer games. At least in the first party side. It's Call of Duty. They rely on third parties. Street Fighter 5. They rely on third parties for their multiplayer games. Fortnite.
Hmm.
Whereas Xbox, at the very least, Xbox has had that history of having solid multiplayer games. Forza Horizon.
Yeah,
Uh,
that Forza Horizon 5, that was huge. That was
that was
one of the
huge.
that was the first Game Pass drop where I remember seeing people who, first off, never played like racing games at all. And I
Hmm.
never see them post about Xbox. I saw all of these people posting about Forza Horizon 5 and like
Hmm.
playing it via Game Pass. And that was like one of the first moments where I'm like, this does have huge potential to make these games explode. That
Hmm.
that, that was the biggest Forza launch by a
Absolutely, yeah.
lot.
Yeah, and you saw that exactly with Forza. So it's like they just need if Xbox is able to keep that energy up, then they'd be in a good place. They just haven't been able to keep that energy up. But it was a really great end of the year with Forza and Halo dropping early. Like it really felt like for a little bit
Like,
that
yeah, baby, let's go.
Xbox was coming back, and then Infinite dropped, and Forza Horizon would do its thing. But it was really supposed to be a Halo Infinite that was supposed to. That's why I'm not surprised at the Game Pass numbers not being what they want it to be, because I'm sure that if they suspect that Halo Infinite would be successful, that the numbers would be higher, but it wasn't. So.
Yeah, it wasn't the big must play title that they really kind of needed it to be to grow the
It's not the
service,
live
but
service. I love Fortnite. I played Fortnite for like 3-4 years. I spent like hundreds of dollars on it, and I was like, you know what, Halo Infinite. I'm switching over to Halo Infinite when it comes out. And then I did. I was like, I guess I'm going back to Fortnite because there's no multiplayer, man. That sucks. It's awful.
I made the joke previously, but there was a point in time where I had more fun playing as Master Chief in Fortnite than I did
Yeah.
playing Halo Infinite. And I was like,
Yeah, I
that kind of
Master Chief is actually my go-to skin for Fortnite.
yep,
As soon as Master Chief dropped, I was like, this is the skin. Like I
this
don't
is
need
this is
any
it.
other. I don't need any other skin in Fortnite. Like I just need to be a fucking Spartan in the Fortnite universe. That's
Dropping in
great.
the Pelican, just oh man.
It's so cool. So I only play as Master Chief in Fortnite, wishing that Halo was as good as Fortnite, you know. But I've always looked at Fortnite as kind of a successor to Halo, anyways. You know, Fortnite does feel like a massive arena shooter, and they're you know, mixing in different elements, and you know, RPG elements, obviously the battle royale, everything like that. But like the way that the craziness and the hectic chaos of Fortnite reminds me of old school Halo, especially with the vehicles and like the traversal and everything like that. It really reminded me of old school Halo, and so that's why when Halo Infinite dropped, I was like, okay, this is old school Halo. This is good. You know, let's see some new maps. Let's see some new game types, and that didn't happen. So, you know.
So are you a big fan of the idea and the possibility of the Halo Battle Royale then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, I don't know about Halo Battle Royale or Battle Royale. I do think that Battle Royale might be on its way out in terms of as a trend. But I've always thought that Halo Battle Royale would work so well, you know, especially if you have like duos or the three teams or whatever like that. I was playing Apex Legends and I was like, I wish this was Halo instead. I'm sorry, you know. Apex Legends is a great game, but when I'm playing Apex Legends, I'm like, I wish I was a Spartan instead with vehicles, you know, and the
Dude,
guns that we have there.
Halo has the best vehicles in any
And the
multiplayer
physics,
game.
you know, and the physics, the physics in a battle royale, that's the difference, you know.
Yeah, because Fortnite has gotten a lot better with physics, but early Fortnite wasn't that
Yes.
impressive in terms of
It
the
wasn't.
the
It
physics
barely
type.
had any physics. Exactly. It barely had any physics. Now Fortnite has a lot of that going on, which is fun. And that's why I feel like Halo kind of missed the boat there. It's like you could have been that first, you know.
Where do you stand with Halo 5's Warzone? Because I
I love
sometimes
Warzone.
oh, okay, perfect. I talked to people who really didn't like Warzone, but that was the mode for me. When I played Halo 5 multiplayer, I played Warzone and that was it, and I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for Halo Infinite to have its answer to that because
No, I didn't know.
I don't need it to have a battle royale per se, but I need it to have a huge open zone. Like the war zone felt like a Halo war. Like everything was happening. There was
Yeah.
bombs, explosions, chaos, and it just
There's a lot of push and pull between the teams. There's
yeah.
PvE aspects. It's so good. They really did a good job with Warzone. I was so surprised that and they get that feedback. They know that people love Warzone, people who have played it. And like Infinite could have been a great chance to bring that Warzone concept to a broader audience. That's what they wanted, right? They want the broader audience, right? That's what they told. The Washington Post is actually the source of that quote from Bonnie Ross, you know. But they wanted that broader audience. You could have brought Warzone to that broader audience, and people would discover how great Warzone was and how unique it was as a game mode. And it was very good for Halo. And it's shocking that they still don't have that in Infinite. It's weird. And yeah, the maps were massive. They're always sectioned off. There were different bases. You always felt like you were on a journey
Yeah.
when you're fighting in Warzone, you know. And it's never too big. It's never like Warzone and Call of Duty, you know. But so that's why it always felt like controlled, good chaos, which is what always Halo is, right? That's good
Yes.
Halo.
Yes. Our best memories of Halo are playing with friends and there's just explosions and noise and cars colliding and tanks colliding and like chaos is what separated Halo from other shooters. Is that
Bodies flying from the
yeah,
sky or whatever like that, you
grenades,
know?
cars flipping, bodies flying.
Yeah.
Like you said, the physics really are what have always elevated Halo. And to see that potential with Halo Infinite, I would love to see that blown up to a bigger scale. Because when they did big team battle, it's cool. Don't get me wrong, that's my preferred game mode.
Yeah,
But
same here.
in this day and age, their big team battle didn't feel that big because the landscape has changed quite a bit. So it was
It's the maps are pretty small. It is disappointing. Like I have to pretend that I'm in a bigger war zone than I'm at, but like yeah, the big team battle maps are actually kind of tiny.
yeah, and it's again back in the day. It felt everything felt like Blood Gulch felt massive. This
But
huge
get first
sprawling
felt
space.
so massive. Yeah.
Yeah. But now in this day and age, because we've seen Fortnites, we've seen Apex Legends, we've seen all these other games blow up the shooter and say, boom, here's a massive world that you can explore. When we got to the big team battle maps, it's like, well, this is cool. This is fun. This is classic Halo. It feels great to play.
It feels like an old Halo game, yeah, which is fine, but like to recapture that, it needs to do what the Resident Evil remakes do. Is like expand things, but it still feels like that old feeling of like you're on this like long like big battlefield or this long journey or whatever like that. Like Resident Evil 4 remake still has the same the rooms, but like the rooms are bigger, the houses are fucking bigger. So it still maintains that sense of scale that we had in 2005. Modernized. That's what it means to modernize the game design. And with Halo, they didn't really do that. They just kind of made good Halo maps again, which is great. Fine. But again, to your point, Warzone felt like that real expansion. And like, yeah, you make a great point. There's so many other games right now that just feel so much bigger and give that sense of like scale that Halo used to give us, that Blood Gulch used to give us. That
Yeah.
the Tundra map. What was it called again?
Oh God. I'm
Oh my god.
blanking. That was like a DLC
Yeah.
map, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but anyways, yeah, like the old maps from Halo 3 too. Blood Gulch and I don't know the names anymore, but yeah, Blood Gulch obviously is the Blood Gulch felt huge back in the day.
Uh-huh.
We need a Halo game to make us feel that way again, but you can't just remake Blood Gulch. You can't just make Blood Gulch the same size.
Yeah,
That
like
doesn't work
Blood
anymore.
Gulch prettier. It's cool. Don't get me
Our,
wrong.
our, our
I'll enjoy
brains are
it.
bigger now too. So we need that.
You gotta. We've seen it. Again, we talked about this with the frame rate and stuff and resolution earlier. Once you're on the other side, it
Yeah,
changes it forever. It changes what you
yeah,
expect. And I see people say
yeah.
like, "Well, isn't Halo being fun good enough?" And yeah, for some people, I think Halo Infinite being fun is good enough. Like that is the
Mhm,
end goal of a video game most of the time is it should be fun to play. Halo Infinite is fun to play. I don't have any issues when I'm playing Halo Infinite. The moment to moment gameplay feels incredible. I
mhm,
love the feel of Halo Infinite. But then it's also not unfair for people who've seen other games as a service titles, seen other shooters innovate and evolve when it comes to either progression or just multiplayer suites for them to
mhm,
say this isn't enough for me. And
mhm,
I
mhm.
I think that's fair. I don't think that's unfair to say that
It's
it's
very fair. It's very fair. Like you said, the folks like us, we are on the other side of things, right? Younger folks, they've never been on the side that we've been past.
ex- exactly.
They've always been on this side.
Exactly. And that's as much as we want to look at what we want.
Mhm.
There are generations where they look at Halo and say that's like the old shooter. Like that's like the
Quaint.
old guy
Yeah, it's
shooter.
quaint. What a small shooter Halo is, and like what a weird thing to think about Halo. It's Halo.
But that used to have just like commercials and banners and just
Halo
entire
was yeah,
grocery
Halo
stores
was our
filled with
Star
Halo
Wars.
Mountain Dew. Yeah, like
Yeah, Halo was our Star Wars back in the day. You
uh-huh.
know, it was our Harry Potter. It was our Star Wars. It was our Lord of the Rings. And it doesn't have that energy anymore, and it doesn't have that same sense of scale in the gameplay. You know.
So yeah, obviously we've harped on Halo Infinite, being disappointing for a lot recently, but again, a lot of that I think comes from the fact that so many of us just love Halo
We love
and
Halo. We love
Combat
Halo.
Evolved in particular. We had that moment where we played a Halo and it just like you said, there was the before and after. And
Mhm.
when that moment when everything changes. And for a lot of us we had that moment with Halo. And
Yeah, it's like
so
I was doing drugs. When I first played Halo. I was like, man, this is like a drug.
this
Yeah.
mind altering experience. You're like,
Yeah.
you can do this in a video game?
Yeah.
Why hasn't this existed until now? Why haven't I
Yeah.
experienced this until now? And
Mm-hmm.
again, we those moments are why so many of us I think fall in love with games. Is you have that moment, that mechanic, that
Hmm.
level, that boss fight, whatever it is that just changes everything that you expect a game to be. And
Full circle. It goes right back to why we love games, right?
Hmm? Coming full circle, all right? That's why we love it. And I think that's going to do it. We're going to wrap it up here for this week's episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Gene, thanks so much for taking the time to hang out, man. It was really awesome getting a chance to sit down and talk to you. Because again, this is the longest that we've ever talked. Outside of some memes on Twitter here and there, like we haven't had sat down and had a long conversation. So I appreciate you taking some time out of your Saturday to come hang out with me.
Miles, I appreciate you inviting me on. I think our first interaction was just how positive you are for the games industry, and I think that's an important asset. There's so much negativity and bullcrap out there. So your positivity, your like you told me that I feel like I have an openness to games too. I see that in you too. I think I think we both recognize that in each other in terms of how open-minded we are in terms of like different game experiences and different platforms as well. So it's a real pleasure to finally chop it up with you. So
Yeah, man. No,
thank you so much for having me.
really appreciate that. And again, like, yeah, we talk about openness and honesty in this space, and that's like, it's important. It's an important balance because obviously for me, video games and talking about video games, the reason I do it is because I love to do it. It's fun to do it. It's exciting to
Mm-hmm.
do it. And so I try to make sure that's a pillar of like what I'm doing. And I see people talk about video games and clearly it's not exciting or they're not interested in it or they're frustrated by it. And it's a hard mentality to get. There's hard conversations to have about the games industry, but I've tried to make it a point to highlight the things that do excite me because
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot more interesting to talk about what you like than what you don't like.
Yeah, it's in your questions. You asked me straight up, like, what do you love about video games? You didn't ask me what do you hate about video games. What do you think is the biggest problem in the video games industry today?
Yeah.
You didn't ask that. Yeah, like you asked me what do you love about video games? That's great.
All right. Well, Gene, thank you so much. Huge shout out to everyone who tuned in, watched the show live. Appreciate you. Huge shout out to everyone who listens to the audio versions as well. We're going to be back next week with the big episode 100. So stay tuned on some details there. But appreciate you all. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you next week.